What's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to From the Hat, where we are talking by choice, chosen by random. Today, I am joined with my good friend Savan Gupta, everybody, from Harvard.
Oh, hi there, folks. Hi, Thomas. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. Look, I know you weren't supposed to be here today, but I just want you to know I am a pale Mediterranean, not a white dude. Let's just get that off the table, all right?
Fair enough. Yes.
This is your first time on the show, right?
Yes, it is.
All
We've
right,
done podcasts before, but that was like in antiquity.
Yeah, but
ago.
you were dressed up, so
Yes.
I thought I was at a Halloween party. It was different.
Yes, very different. Character
You had
play.
different costumes. You were like, "Can we go to commercial break so I could change my underwear?" I was like, "Sure," you know. And you ran over.
Outfit. Yeah.
What?
To change my entire outfit. Different character was.
Oh yeah. But each character has different underwear, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, you can't just be like, "I'm gonna wear whitey tighties for every character," because why would that character wear whitey tighties?
I need to defend myself here. At no point did either of those characters wear tighty whities.
Yeah, they were pretty loose. I don't know why you got the really big ones. Maybe because of the front. Well, look, when you were getting changed, I saw the elephant trunk hanging. At first I was like, "What is wrong with his knee?" Anyway, for anyone who has watched the show, thank you. For anyone who hasn't, and you're on this episode, I have a hat. I got some balls in the hat. I got my hand in the hole, rolling around with the balls because I love touching the balls.
Do you?
Do you cup them? I cup them. I rub them. I make sure they're clean.
So it's a full service operation.
Full service. So the balls have a number on them, and they're associated with a topic. And Savan is going to tell me when, and then I'm going to pull out the ball.
Why am I involved? Okay, I suppose when.
When? Well, because you're a guest.
Okay.
Oh snap! Number 24, everybody.
Okay.
Number 24. Let's go to the board. Number 24 is the host chooses one of the following: a question or a ranking. Oh, let's see. Question or a ranking. Let's do a question. How many French fries is it okay for a friend to take before you tell them to order their own? Now, as always, I give the question to the guest every single time. So, Savan, how many French fries is it okay for a friend to take before you're like, yo? Exactly, to order your own.
I'm going to give a hard and fast answer, and then I'll give a philosophical answer if that works for you.
Go for it, yeah.
Right. Hard and fast. If they're just a friend, lowercase f, and there's no like other situation going on, 30%. Once you've exceeded 30% of the fry order, I'll get your own. Now that said, if that friend is homeless or destitute or dating me or dating a best friend of mine or something like that, then that might be negotiable. There might be other factors in play.
So what you're saying is the bigger their boobs, the more fries they get.
I wouldn't say it that way, but I'll show you.
So you judge people on their boob size.
I do not judge people on their boob size. I will judge how many fries I might share on the basis of a number of external factors, and I'll leave it at
that. How many teeth do they have to have before you give them your phone number?
I'm not counting people's teeth, but
so when you meet a girl and she's like, "Hey," and then she smiles and she's missing
does she have a smile?
Teeth. Well, she does, but there's only 4 teeth in her mouth. Are you like, I don't judge people, so I can't talk to you?
There's judgment and then there's aesthetic appeal, and that's 2 different things.
Oh, so you're not judging them, but you're like, aesthetically, this is not appealing. You don't get any fries. You get 10 fries, 10% of my fries,
if that.
So you don't care about boobs, you care about teeth. So if they don't have chicklings in their mouth, you're like, I'm done.
These are a lot of very bold statements here. Like, I'm like, whoa. Just because I don't judge people on boob size doesn't mean I don't care about that. And I don't know if teeth is more important. I think that these are all important factors.
Aren't you supposed to love for love? Like, what happens when she hits 70 and loses all her teeth? You're like, I'm sorry, I
will have many years of having loved her with teeth before then.
So she gets more fries.
There is an emotional investment there.
That's interesting.
If she's, listen, if both
I am.
parties are going to love each other for that length of time, they're both going to have to get accustomed to certain things not being de facto spec by the time
Well,
they reach 70 years old. So, like,
we're talking about marriage though, so they don't have to love each other.
I mean, sure.
Once you get married, it's out the window.
Okay.
Love and sex don't exist once you're married. It slowly deteriorates because you're like, this person.
Again,
you don't agree with that statement? Wait, so are you saying when you get married?
I opt not to comment because I've never been married. So anything I say would be ignorant. I have not been married.
I don't think it would be ignorant because you can still visually
I can
take part.
conceptualize and go what I think marriage should be. But you know what?
Have you ever never seen people married before?
I have seen people married.
Are
Sure.
you saying scientists can't utilize tests on mice
I am saying
accurately because they are
uncomfortable
neither mice or being tested on?
I am uncomfortable making an unqualified superlative on the basis of my non-marriage ass and not having experienced that.
Oh, so what you're saying, just so I'm clarifying this, you're uncomfortable taking a scientist's understanding of a situation because they are not a mouse, nor have they been tested on as the mouse has. Because it's superfluous, right? Isn't it?
Again,
it's just a
I
guess.
think you strawmanned my argument there.
I'm trying to understand the breakdown because
I am uncomfortable taking the role of a scientist in governance or statement of an objective truth about marriage.
So you what you're saying is like you personally would never put you in a situation where you could do research on something to study it because you yourself could not physically be the subject.
I'm saying I would not make a snap judgment on this particular podcast right now to that
because
effect.
You have never seen nor experienced married couples.
I've experienced is a different statement entirely. I don't know what our subject matter is there. When you say experienced,
I'm just because you're saying you can't make you don't have an opinion on marriage because you haven't been
I didn't
married.
say I don't have opinion. I said I do not feel comfortable making a snap judgment on that one way or the other.
Because you haven't been married.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is a snap. Like we could discuss it and dissect it.
I'm not trying to shut down the discussion. By all means, let's discuss. So what do I think is a better thing rather than my stating it is thus? What do I think that certainly there's sundowning periods where sex is off the table or not as on the table as it was. And certainly,
for married couples,
love and affinity goes through evolutions and highs and lows, Well,
I'm just trying to debate your statement was interesting where you said, well, if I'm with them for 70 years, loving them, I love them for long, and then they lost their teeth. And my pushback on that was ultimately like,
I'm
you're
sure
married, so who says you're in love?
And regardless of that, the point is you're with them and that you're going to presumably remain with them unless you don't want to be with them, in which case you won't be,
That's not necessarily true as well, because there's people who are in abusive relationships that can't leave. You're making a lot of snap judgments with the 70-year love, with the staying with people. That's what you said.
Before the call started, yes, I did. You're enjoying putting me on the spot with this one. I can tell. Like I can see the bleed.
You said words. I heard the words.
I am definitely guilty of saying words.
In the bold statement of, well, you loved them for 70 years, so why would with teeth? So why would? And then I said, but you're married, so who says you love them?
Right.
So you're presuming people stay together because they love each other and or because they're married. And I'm saying that isn't necessarily true. There's a lot of nuance.
Oh yeah, there is absolutely a lot of nuance. You're enjoying turning my weapons against me, aren't you?
I'm just saying it was a snap. You didn't want to make the snap call with the other thing, but you made one with the idea that people can see it's okay to have a thought, an opinion that might not necessarily make sense logically, because it's not necessarily a true statement that if you're with someone for 70 years, you are indeed in love because you're married. That is not a true statement. For whatever
reasons you are with them for 70 years.
Yeah.
You are going to accept a lot of things about them, and they're going to accept a lot of things about you.
Oh, yeah.
And one would assume, and this is an assumption, that you're still together.
Yeah.
With those changes. Now, again, this is excluding external factors that force people to stay together.
Like chains.
Codependence or things like that. Like it's
AIDS. I get it.
Jesus.
Herpes is the thing that keeps people together. They're like, well, we both have it. Might as well just keep it going.
Wow. This is taking a turn.
If you found out you were married to a woman and you were in love with her, and then it turned out she didn't know she had herpes because she got it through, like, say, blood transfer or whatever. Somehow she sat on a toilet bowl and got herpes, right? And then she gave the herpes to you. Would you stay with her, or are you like, we're done? Because you both have the herpes. It was an accident, and you love each other.
I honestly don't know, because
It's not her
frankly,
fault.
how does this topic come up? How do we discuss it? What's the nature of our
Well,
relationship?
the bumps would probably create a discussion.
I'm saying, like, the discourse. Like, if we have a healthy relationship outside of that and can discuss it rationally and parse through it, then I might stay with
Can
her.
we role play and see how it would go? Let me
I
play the
prefer
girl.
not. There are many things I can role play. This is one I definitely prefer not to.
I'll get out my dice if that'll help.
That won't.
Roll a
Shockingly enough,
D20.
that won't.
Savan, I need to talk to you.
Thomas,
No.
this is highly not what I signed up for.
Well, From the Hat is also a metaphor of off the dome, like
Sure.
just conversation and following the threads of randomness.
Listen, I've just linked myself to the meme of like 50 different douchebags tipping a trilby and saying "milady" while improperly calling it a fedora. So,
because we're talking by choice, but it's chosen by random. It's meaning, like, we allow the conversation to go. Have you ever heard of the yes and?
I would hope so, considering I work in improv. Yeah.
All right. Then why have you said no many a times?
Because consent is important, Thomas.
I understand, but yes, see, this is what I always find fascinating about the human species, and I say that as an outsider. Okay.
Okay.
We think our words actually have power in the sense of, if I say something, then it has to be true. Meaning, like, if I say to you, would you, you're married to a woman and she has herpes and she didn't know she had herpes. And then if you go, oh, well, yeah, I would stay with her. Like, you can never, ever, A, change your mind on that. And B, because you said it, now everyone thinks you would live with herpes. Like, the human species doesn't understand you can have that conversation because it's fake. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there is no
perception and how people take words. Like, we'll be here all day, but it'll be a fascinating conversation because
I don't care how people take the words. I'm just saying they do take the words.
Sure. And what I'm telling you is, like, people still to this day associate me with characters I play and think that the statements those characters made are objectively my opinions.
Yeah.
People harass actors for franchises where they were just showing up for a job and getting a paycheck. Granted, they were doing presumably some acting as well. But the point is, they take that and that their decisions are objectively the decisions of the franchise and vice versa, and they're bound together.
And you think it's crazy when people see that in them, right?
And it's just, I will never advocate for harassing an actor for the choices a business makes with a franchise.
So someone should
absolutely advocate with harassing a company and bullying the executives of that company.
So with that said, with you saying, you initially essentially saying no, right? You didn't yes and, right? Because it's just a conversation. So it's interesting that not only are you a part of the improv world.
Well, am I on? I was not told.
I mean, we are on in a sense because we're using a different mask.
Yes.
Right? Because you have a private mask, you have familiar mask, and then you have unfamiliar or stranger mask.
Sure.
Right? You and I have a familiar mask, but you're actually being split between two masks, which is unfamiliar and familiar, because strangers would be seeing this. So you have the added anxiety, not consciously, but subconsciously, because that's how the masks work, where you have a quote unquote performative element. Therefore, you're slightly more reserved than normally, like if we weren't on the camera, right?
I mean, ironically enough, I think what's happening is I didn't put myself on because I'd be much more, let me package myself to be digestible, for whoever the fuck's watching.
Which is a mask.
Rather, I've been sort of verbally fencing with you in the way that we would do so privately because, hey, we're just two guys talking. So,
yeah.
So Yeah, I'll strive to be more digestible.
All right. So what you're saying is 30% fries, and then
Hard number, 30%.
30%. See, this is interesting to me because I would give all my fries to anyone.
And again, this is where we get into nuance. First of all, I don't eat fast food anymore, but that would be me saying no, right? So I'm thinking about when I do eat fast food or did,
Yeah.
right?
Why
What
does
the
it have to be
situation-
fast food? Haven't you ever made homemade fries, which are actually healthy for you?
I have not made homemade fries, and I choose to consume my potatoes in other fashions when it's homemade.
Like
So
mashed.
mashed is one, yes.
Yeah. Baked.
Baked, absolutely. I love
Oh, you
baked.
like baked? You like do you blow like the pot smoke onto the potato? Or how do you bake a potato?
In an oven, typically.
So you put it in the oven and then you blow marijuana smoke into the oven and then close the door to bake it? Like, I don't understand.
I mean, if it's just me making it, otherwise there's a rotation involved. And
You know, it doesn't really cook though if you throw like that seems weird that you would just blow marijuana smoke onto a potato to bake it and then you try to eat it. You know how hard that is? What do you think all eyes are on you when you're blowing the potato with the smoke of the marijuana?
this is a long walk for this cup of milk, man. Like, let me tell you.
But do you think all eyes are on you from the potato's perspective when you're blowing smoke?
Now we have to consider the perspective of the potato. I thought you were against this level of nuance.
I'm just saying the potato has eyes.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Am I wrong?
And I say, look at me. You look at me while I do this.
You look at me. I'm gonna eat you raw. All right. So you don't eat fries. So your answer doesn't even have value, is what you're saying.
I mean, there was a point where I did.
So when you ate fries, you were very territorial, up to 30%.
I was stating as
beyond
a
30%.
hard fast rule. Again, that's a
You
hard.
count the fucking fries, and at a certain point, you're like, "Hold!"
You can fucking eyeball it. Come on now, like it's just.
There
But
are
again,
10 fries.
mitigating
If you
circumstances.
eat 3 or more, you get your own. Do you do that before you eat it? Do you
Listen,
count it
I'd
out?
much rather buy my friend their own fries and be like, look, have
why?
fries. Nobody goes hungry. Eat, please,
Yeah.
manja. But have your own fries. Let me
your
have
own
mine.
fries. You don't want because you're not really comfortable sharing your food in that.
It's not a question of sharing. Again, if I didn't feel comfortable sharing, I wouldn't offer to buy their fries.
Well, you're
That
not
is
sharing at that point.
Is the value in sharing the partaking of the sameness, or is the value in sharing in the giving and the generosity?
Yeah, but if you buy somebody fries, you're technically just giving them their own fries. And if you have some of their fries, now you're
Thomas,
sharing
I'm
with
more
them.
than happy to combine the fries in a platter if McDonald's handed you a platter.
All right. Okay. All right. Wait, let's go there.
Yeah.
So someone's like,
It's
grab
not
your
about
fries.
don't have my fries. Yeah.
Wait. We got
Please,
follow-ups because you're saying some stuff and I'm interested now.
Okay.
All right. I was interested before, but you didn't want to talk about having herpes. So listen, you have 10 fries, they eat 3, and you go, hold, we don't go more than 30%. I'm gonna buy your own fries. And then they're like, oh, you don't want to share them? Look, we can combine the fries. So then you combine the new set of fries. It's now their fries that you purchased for them and gave to them as a gift. So you're gonna be sharing their fries, and they're gonna be sharing your fries because they're mixed.
Yeah.
Is there a 30% rule still in place for the new plate of mixed fries?
No, at this point, I'm not counting coup. As
So
long as you
now
don't interfere
they
with
can
my.
eat all the fries, and you'd be okay with it.
If I don't get 2/3 of an order of fries, there is a problem.
So there's still it doesn't matter if they're combined. You're just adding more to the pool to increase the percentage.
But again,
percentage.
it's the question is, am I getting 2/3 of the thing I ordered or not? Because then there is no purpose in my buying my own fries. I'm just buying fries for my friend.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Nothing.
Oh,
but I also might want fries.
So you want the fries, but you don't want your friend to have the fries. But it's okay if they have the fries, but they're not going to get more than 30% of the fries.
You're going to have me quoting Donald Glover. No. I have no problem with them having fries.
Are you being childish, Gambino? Okay. All right.
I have a problem when their need for fries interferes with my intake of fries.
So you do care if they eat your fries.
I care that I have a deficit of fries, regardless of how we get there.
So you have to keep buying fries to increase the pile to
In order
have
for a fair distribution to occur. Let's do a fair distribution, you know?
All right, but at what point are you like, I think I ordered too many fries and I can't eat the 2/3, but I have to eat the 2/3 before they can eat any more fries.
2/3 of what would have been an original order, not 2/3 of the combined pile.
Oh, so if you had 10 fries, as long as you can eat 7 fries, you're good.
If that's what constitutes 2/3 of an order of fries.
Well, to have the math easy for everybody listening.
Sure. Yes.
You said 30%, right? So if you're like, look, let me get my 7, and you just take it and just eat the 7 in one shot, you're like, enjoy the gourmet meal of 3.
So I'm a river to my people. Enjoy.
Like, you get 3 fries. Are they allowed to partake in the ketchup, or do you measure that as well?
I mean, ketchup is free. You can just load up on that.
So you're okay, because like to hit 30% of ketchup when it's free is almost impossible.
What's more, I'm not counting coup on ketchup.
But the fries,
I wouldn't even count coup on fries. But we're just saying abstractly in a platonic ideal, what do I think would be fair? You know?
Can you picture? I just want to film you eating fries, right? And then someone gets to their 3rd fry, and you just go, you should eat that a little slower. And they're like, why? Well, you're on your 3rd fry. And they're like, what do you mean?
Again, you're talking about
like, well, because you're not getting any more fries because you just ate your 30%.
I want to be clear. Other people have covered me for food in the past. I've had financially destitute moments where people have covered for me, and I've covered for other people. We're not talking about 3 fries. I'm talking about a general party etiquette of, have you taken more than you would ever put in? Have you exceeded the value of generosity to the point where it's like, bro, this is tacky? That's what I'm getting at.
So you're Joey Tribbiani from Friends, where you don't share food, but you'll buy a table, like a table dish.
I mean, I'll share food as well, but it depends on other factors.
Yeah, up to 30%.
More than 30%. Again,
it's gone up. If they
Yeah.
have all their teeth and you've been with them for 70 years. I know this other, they don't have herpes. Look, I know, I'm following.
Sure.
By the way, no one's judging you on how horrible 30% is, because like
they can if they want. Watch, there's gonna be somebody out there be like, he's such a conservative. He's literally got a 30% demarcation. What a capitalist! Like, there's gonna be somebody out there.
He said 30%. All right, listen. First of all,
I love with the legal pad too. That was great.
Okay. I got it. This ain't my first rodeo. No, like no one's listening, and they're like, if they take you for your word that you only do 30%, 3 fries, like, obviously, like, to embrace the 30%, that, how funny that would be to be like, yeah, as soon as when they're chewing down their 3rd fry, I'm pulling away with my dish. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got to go to another table. I don't trust their.
Well, it's a funny scenario because I've had to at one point. It wasn't 30%, but it was something like 50%. At one point, a friend of mine who I'd been covering for a bit is bogarting half my fries, and it's like, this is a scenario that's happened. I'm like, bro, party foul. Like, come on.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I will get you your own fries, but this ain't sharing. You are now colonizing my fries.
I do have a hard rule with sharing, though. Like, let's say I bought the what do you call those? The mozzarella sticks.
Sure.
Right. And it comes with 6. The only thing I ask is that I get the last one, or at minimum, are you going to eat that?
Yeah.
If they ask if I'm going to eat that and I say no, and they take the last one, deserves a courtesy. But again, if they ate all of them, I wouldn't care. But that last one deserves a courtesy, if that makes sense. Like, oh, I see you have one last fry. Are you going to eat that? And if I go no, then they could take it. But the last bite of whoever purchases the item, they have the courtesy of the last experience of it, and at minimum the first experience. But they could have all of it.
See, I agree with that in principle. And like, let's put it this way: this is one of those other mitigating factors. Say I'm out on a team meal, where I've taken my team out for whatever. after working an event or something like that.
Yeah.
Sure, please eat for the love of God. Like, I need sustenance, but so does everyone else with me. And like a couple of my people are diabetic or have blood sugar issues or things like that. I'm not going to begrudge them that last French toast stick or mozzarella stick or whatever the hell else,
Yeah.
But
your plate,
courtesy
like
is,
this.
but also we live in a society and there are certain manners that have a role.
Well, that's the thing. The manners dictates the relationship. It's not, the food doesn't matter
Exactly.
in both scenarios. It is the relationship. Like, but again, like when I take a girl out to dinner, and if she doesn't say thank you, I don't care. Like, that doesn't affect me because
Right.
I'm going to see her naked. That is the thank you. You know what I'm saying? And by the way, I'm not assuming she's going to let me see her naked. This is
just
assuming I'm in a relationship where I am seeing her naked on the
You're presenting the conventions of the country.
Yeah. Boobies are the joy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't need to have manners. You bless me with the greatness of God's gift,
I dispute. Listen, if I'm seeing someone and they don't have manners, it ain't lasting long. Let's just put it that way. I dispute the notion. See, you can give that an equivalence. You can give that an equivalence. I don't. I'm like, listen, if you ain't coming correct, you ain't coming.
So what you're saying is if they're deaf, they're mute and blind, you can't be with them because they can't say the words you need.
How do we communicate under those circumstances?
They would shake their boobies around.
Is this a semaphore? Like, am I deciphering?
Have you ever spoken to somebody who is deaf, blind, and mute?
I have some folks that I've worked with who are partially deaf or.
No, I'm saying all three.
Yeah, never all three.
You put your hand in their hand and they do the sign language.
Okay.
I am trained in sign language.
I am not. So much respect to you on that. And no, that's outside of my experience.
Yeah. So when I am with a woman that is like that and I put my hand in her to get the thank you, she then takes my hand and puts it on our boob.
I had a feeling we were coming back around to that.
that is, she has done the deed of kindness. But see, this is where we get into, and we have like 3 minutes before we have to call it a day.
Oh, okay.
I try to make them tight episodes.
Sure.
But the idea of what you deem respectful isn't necessarily what others do. So do you have a deep dive conversation over the course of the first few meetings or at least hours with somebody and say, listen, I have a thing about respect.
Yeah.
And there are certain things, like, have you had that actual conversation on first date where you go, look, I need you to show your appreciation for my given deeds. And if you don't, I know that I can't be with you. Whereas it's maybe they believe.
To me, it's part of the getting to know you. It's not like, oh, shower praises upon me for covering a meal that you could have perfectly well covered yourself. It is there reciprocity? Is there manners?
No,
that's part of the. How's that?
Look, our perception and our understanding of things are not identical to the next person.
Exactly. And
so you need a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So if someone is misbehaving in your mind,
right,
you need to. So you can tell when I'm doing serious voice or funny voice, right? Yeah. You need to have a follow-up. So if you buy dinner for a woman or anybody, I don't know, you could be with a guy, right? With her, it happens. Yeah. And you pay the bill. They don't offer the pay or give half. They don't go for the check and they don't say thank you. You're being influenced by your bias because you don't understand their life. And you're going to react without a follow-up. So the follow-up is, I just want you to know, I'm not saying you did this, but the way I see things, the way I'm perceiving it is you didn't say thank you, that is an objective truth. They did not say thank you. You didn't offer and you didn't reach. It's not a no-go for me. It's just, I'm curious why.
Yeah, there's got to be a follow-up dialogue, some degree of, hey, can we unpack this a little bit?
Yes, but to react emotionally without the follow-up causes the issue. That's the miscommunication.
Right.
Because if somebody behaves a certain way and you perceive it a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean what you feel, right? Even though it is a true feeling, is reality.
Absolutely. Again, how would you know how the other party thinks unless you ask them?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if somebody doesn't say thank you, you were basically suggesting that that is inappropriate behavior, but maybe that is appropriate behavior for how they were raised, or maybe them leaving the last bite of food on the plate.
That's their thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, because in some cultures, that's a way of saying the food was great.
And we would unpack that, is what I'm saying. It's not like I'm going to just cut it off like that. I'm saying we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah, you're going
And
to look.
how we have that conversation is what will dictate whether there's another date more than the incident itself.
Have you ever approached a situation like that where you're like, I want to bring this up, but I feel uncomfortable because I feel like I might be attacking them or degrading them, or are you just like, because I'm outright, this sounds like a joke, but it's not. Like when I'm on a first date, I hate like when people are like, do you like spaghetti? Like, what's your favorite movie? I'm like, do you shower after you shit? Because I have an actual filth phobia.
Sure.
Right. So like, to me, that is, it may not be as crass as that. Obviously I'm
you window dress it a bit. I got you.
Yeah, it would be something that, but I'm also comfortable with sex talk on a first date.
I will address things as it seems germane and organic to the conversation, and some amount of that first date conversation under the heading of getting to know you without doing a checklist or anything trite like that will be some degree of what's your feelings on reciprocity, where does fairness fall with you, things like that.
And do you believe in marriage? Do you want kids?
Things that might be heavy for a first date, but like,
I don't think so.
I'm saying depending on the context. How am I meeting this person? Is this a long-standing friend before I start dating them? You know, all kinds of stuff like that comes into play. You know,
well, what I'm saying is I don't know what you went to Harvard for, but I'm a student of psychology.
Sure.
All right. So I've been studying psychology, and not just like those kids.
Social sciences.
So, all right, like I've gone to classes, I have dealt with actual therapists and had conversations with them. I read the books on it. The issue with not having or feeling that those conversations are hard and deep is something else going on with the individual. Right? If I bring up, listen, I'm probably not, I don't like having sex with someone until I have a connection with them or that I feel there's a future.
Right.
If that is an uncomfortable conversation on a first date, that person is technically not the person for you. If I'm uncomfortable saying that, there is some work I need to do because that is not an uncomfortable boundary to bring up.
Or you might not be comfortable bringing that up with that person, which is something else to unpack, right?
For yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So there is no heavy topic you could bring up on a first date. Everything that makes it heavy is the foundations of what makes your psyche and what makes their psyche. Fear is on you. Them being uncomfortable with them is on them. No, fear is on you. Your fears are yours. No one makes you fearful.
I'm not disputing your secondary point there.
All right. Yeah. Because if I'm afraid to bring something up, I need to work on myself.
If
they're uncomfortable with what I say, they need to work on themselves.
Right. I'm just saying contextually, there's some things with certain people, if I was on a first date with, I'd be like, nah, this is a second date. And that's not about I'm afraid to bring it up to them or I'm afraid that they're uncomfortable. It's more about the context of what are we doing? Where are we at? I will have some conversations in a diner that I would not have running around Rye Playland, for example, that I would not have in a crowded movie theater. So like there's where are we is also a factor in question, you know?
I think that's an extreme version because in the theater you're supposed to be quiet.
Right. But you get what I'm saying.
There's certain things I won't say in a movie theater or at a play. Yeah, of
before
course.
the movie starts,
Then
though,
you're a
I'm not talking about while it's running. I'm talking about before the curtain comes up. And
again, I would feel.
Well, you've got an audience all around you that's listening to this conversation.
But what does that have? That is a sense of fear, by the way. You may not recognize it as a fear, but it is a fear. It's a fear to intrude on other people. It's a fear to have certain things. It's not a fear like, oh my God, there's a dragon, but it is based on the resistance is a fear, but that's not a negative thing.
Right.
It's like saying anxiety is negative. It's not. There are good and
it's
positive
just different
anxiety.
comfort zones is where I see it. I don't
But
necessarily
comfort is based on a fear.
I think that's one take. I don't think that's the only take. And I think that there's a different way to slice that than just fear response.
I think the word fear is what's making the conversation difficult, because fear is not a negative word.
Right. Apprehension, etc. We could go through 50 synonyms.
Yeah.
Agree. So the point is, for whatever reasons, however one wants to package it, there are certain scenarios where a conversation is comfortable and certain scenarios where a conversation isn't. I think taking at least some degree of account into where you are when you're having that conversation is important.
Those are choices, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But I would say on the surface level that it doesn't matter any of that. It's only a preference at that point. You know what I'm saying? Because you're making preferences. I would like, if I'm in a movie theater before it starts, I'm uncomfortable. Well, I'm not uncomfortable. If I'm at a diner and it's the 15th date and we haven't had sex yet, I'm comfortable saying something. Well, I'm comfortable saying something on the first date. Like, you have, for me, the way that I understand psychology and communication is that we cannot, it's like if I ask a girl to be my girlfriend.
Sure.
But I didn't have a conversation on what that is.
Right.
I'm in the wrong because I'm placing assumption onto the situation. And then what if they do things against?
You don't have a shared understanding of what that term even means.
Yeah. You know, because I'm polyamorous and some people are monogamous, right? Now, should I bring up that I'm poly or should I not? Right. And that becomes a debate because, well, I'm on a date with a girl and she assumes I'm monogamous. Right.
I think that disclosure there is kind of important regardless.
Now that's I agree that it should be brought up, but it's not something that has to be said. That's society's control over the foundation of relationships. Well, if you're not monogamous, you have to tell me because it's disgusting or whatever added bias is on, right?
Any sort
of, like, I don't need to tell you if I'm straight or gay.
Right.
I don't have to tell you that.
But presumably if you were out with somebody who is monogamous, and you are bi, that might be something to disclose, you know?
Why?
If you are
be monogamous and bi,
you certainly can. I'm not
I have to tell you I'm bi. I'm in the closet, but I have to tell you I'm bi because we're going to be in a monogamous relationship.
Nobody has to do
being bi means I'm going to go sleep with other people.
I'm not saying that. But if you were poly and bi, that might be something to disclose.
But if you're poly and straight,
I think that's something to disclose. But I don't think that it's a mandate. But if you want to differentiate yourself from the stereotypes that are prevalent, that equate to the bad faith interpretations of the community and a lot of the skewed societal perceptions of the community, it does behoove to get out in front and say, no, that's not me.
So should people say on a first date, I'm monogamous?
Sure.
How many times have you done that?
Often, given the number of polyamorous people I know.
Oh, all right. Well, if you know
there are a lot of people that assume because I've also been an advocate for polyamorous rights that I'm poly and I am not.
You're like,
so I actually have to clarify because there's a lot of people that have assumed a lot of things about me.
Yeah. Like, for example, you're not, what is it, Russian, but you are Asian, which means you could be Russian because Russia's in Asia. Anyway,
sure.
I mean, none of that is incorrect.
None of that is incorrect, but it would be very awkward for me to start leading conversations with, and by the way, I'm not Russian, but I am Asian.
Which means Russia's in Asia, so technically I could be Russian because they are Asian.
I think they'd have a very different name. Branding.
I would say that it's important to establish if you're monogamous or poly, but I don't think it's a mandate ever. I don't think it's like saying, like, I dated a girl and she was like, you know what my faith is, what's yours? And I go, I cannot tell you because my faith I'm not allowed to tell people what my faith is because I'm not allowed to influence their decision to join or not join. They have to come to that conclusion based on their existence. I cannot tell you anything about my faith. It has to be something that comes from within. And if it does, you trust me, you'll start feeling and understanding the things I understand through my faith. So I'm not allowed to influence that. And they got uncomfortable with that. And they said it was wrong. And I was like, well, that's fine. You didn't have to tell me your faith. You know, like,
I mean, you have definitely dialed up the mystique there, but 100% that's
it happens. And I'm not the only person in my faith. So, you know, there are many, many people in this world that have my faith. Sure. But the purpose, but I also believe faith, political standing, you know, like there's a lot of things that have a terrible bias. Like I'm not Jewish, but if I said I'm Jewish, now I'm Jewish. And now everything that you have as a understanding of Judaism is placed upon me, whether it be a stereotype or a fact or a misconception, right? And I think if I said, and I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but if I said I'm a Democrat or a Republican, it's placed on me, right? So I don't think those things are necessary as a mandate. I don't think I am required to tell you anything about myself. The only thing I'm required to tell you is what I feel I'm required to tell you.
But then how does someone know you?
But knowing me has nothing to, my faith has nothing to do with you knowing me.
I'm not talking about your faith. I'm talking about the other things we were discussing.
Same thing with political views.
Okay.
Being a Republican, again, I'm not a Republican, but being a Republican does not make you a Republican. Being a Democrat does not make you a Democrat.
Yeah.
Right. For example, I consider myself a humanist. I'm an extreme humanist, and it usually gets into weird debates. You and I had a small one before the show started. Because people think in history versus present, and I think of future. And you can't create the future if you're based on trying to rectify the past, because they're not focused on the present changes. They're focused on how do we fix the past. They're not focused on how do I make the future happen. Right? Because they're like, in the present, let's just focus on fixing the past and the present. And it's like, no, how do we work on developing the future?
Right.
Right.
I think that it requires a cosmopolitan view of all three to get there. Because if you've got a tire stuck in a road,
we're not having the same conversation anymore.
Fair enough.
Because you're, again, focused on the past and the present.
And you could even say I was doing so exponentially with the callback to the conversation before the podcast. So,
well, yeah, because I'm talking about changing everything to create the future. Obviously, you need to understand the past and the present where we are so we can make the changes to create a future. But that doesn't mean you have to live with the past and the present, which is what most people do when they're trying to fix things. They are trying to fix because they don't think, how do we work together as one people? We're not one people. Okay. So why not? Well, because the past. All right. Well, you're acknowledging the past, but you're not changing the future. Well, I have to live with this because this happened and this happened. Yeah, but it didn't happen to you. Yes, but I'm dealing with the repercussions of it. Okay, so how do we move forward?
Get to that forward. One has to address that in the present before one can move forward. That doesn't mean one can't think about the future and one can't stylize that, but that has become a very easy loophole for a lot of bad faith actors to sidestep dealing with issues in the present by just saying, I want to talk about the future. And it's like, that's great. And I share that goal. I consider myself something of a futurist myself. But historically and in the present, all of these things have been used as loopholes to continue to ignore the existing problems and not address them, which is just kind of bogarting people's time at this point.
Whatever. Everything you just said, in my opinion, is what everybody talks about, and that is not about compassion. There's no compassion in what you just said.
I think there's a lot of compassion in what it said.
Because it's not about, because that compassion that you have is limited to a group or a few groups of people.
It's not
thinking about tomorrow. It's going, if we don't acknowledge the past and focus on the past, then we can't change the future. But no one's trying to change the future. They're trying to reprimand or get reparations for.
Not even just address. Like, let's put it this way.
We have addressed it.
Global warming.
First of all, Earth will be fine.
Yes, humans will not be in a habit of.
Who cares in 100 to 1,000 years?
As a futurist and a humanist, one would
No,
think.
I'm a humanist, not a futurist.
Okay.
I care about people existing as they exist, but Earth is going to evolve.
Sure.
That's like being a dinosaurist and doing everything you think, and then a meteor hits. Like, it is going to happen. In 250 years, they have a meteor that has basically coming for Earth,
Right.
but it is potentially going to miss us, but it doesn't look like it, and they've been working on a plan. So for me, as a humanist, I care about people that exist.
Right.
But I don't care about evolution in the sense of it's going to do what it does. That's
Okay.
like going, oh, we gotta help Earth and its environment. Well, the sun eventually will blow up. So are we focused on the sun or Earth?
Right.
We're focused on survival. Well, there's no survival when we separate. There's no survival when we compartmentalize people because of history. Like, it's the most ridiculous statement to say, well, what about their history? Your history is a lie. No, it's not. Okay, what's your history? X, Y, Z. Okay, what about before that? How come you're not talking about before that? What do you mean?
But isn't that failing to address the things in the here and now, which would allow the conversation to progress?
History is not the here and now. It's 400 years ago now.
If it has ramifications that affect the now, then yes.
Okay, so now we have to talk about 800 years ago.
I think that there's a way to limit that plateau jumping from one
for
to
your needs. But what about my needs? What about the needs of the future? So you're saying it's only designated to what the people or the group deems valuable.
I think that much like the conversation about dating and having a discussion of the social contract, that the discussion of parameters is a fair game, and you can have that and still have a discussion about the future. I think that
they don't have discussions about the future. They have discussions about their future.
Who's
that? That's whoever the group is, because there's many groups that have been created by society and what I consider weak. It's weak to separate and isolate. It's weak to go, your skin, your hair, your eyes, your faith, your this, your politics.
I agree.
So as soon as somebody does that, I'm not interested in your conversation, because you are isolating yourself and you're raising your plateau because no one believes in what you believe in. So you're terrible. And all I want is everyone to come to the table and have a conversation.
I think if you make space for everyone to feel heard to an extent, again, there's people who take a country mile with that shit. But I think if you make space for all parties to feel heard and to feel like their agendas, their reasonings, their thoughts will be respected, you can at least do the coalition building that gets to where you want to go.
Yeah, as long as those spaces aren't limited.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, like everyone has to be able to come to the table.
Provided they all have their own backyard or what have you, or their own
what do you mean?
Domain separately from the communal space, then yeah.
So again, certain people have no value is what you're saying.
No, that's not what I said at all. I said as long as you're giving people room for that, or they have that in this construct we're talking about.
What do you mean?
So we're talking about multiple groups.
Yeah.
We're talking about coming together and erosion of boundaries, or at least erosion of the divisions.
You put a caveat on it. I'm trying to understand the caveat. I understand the other stuff. I'm saying unless.
Not an unless.
You said unless they have.
As long as. I'm saying you need to have this too. Not this is conditional on that. This is also important to have in order to get the exchange that we're talking about.
So they have to have a domicile.
They have to have a place where they can feel like they don't. If you don't have, take the unhomed, for example, right? The homeless.
So homeless have no voice.
Often enough, they have no voice, and it's not because they should have no voice.
They shouldn't be at the table.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying.
Well, you're saying unless they have a domicile.
I'm saying unless they have given a space where they can hash their, like, let's put it this way. If you are unable
no, I'm confused.
Right.
You said you agreed that everyone should be able to come to the table. Unless.
You're using unless. I said as long as.
Oh, as long as is a stipulation, though. So as long as they have a domicile.
but that's not the same as
Are you
unless.
saying a domicile for people to meet, or are you saying that the people who come to the table have to have a domicile?
They have to have a separate space to prepare and do and live and be. Do you understand?
I disagree with that.
Okay.
So like people in Canada have to have Canada to be able to have a conversation about Canada.
In order to have the United Nations
come to the table to have a conversation.
This is going
I
to be
disagree with that because my argument is that we are human.
Sure, but in order to have the United Nations,
to go talk.
If I may, because you said you were confused, and I'd like to clarify my
No,
point.
no, I get it now. You're saying they have to be able to go, oh, I am Italian. So all the Italians have to get together in House B on over the hill
to do so, and
with
the
our
agency to do so. That's different from have to. There's a lot of heavy lifting you're doing with have to and means and accept. Where I didn't say accept or unless, I said as long as, which is not the same thing.
1 second. All right, so if you are saying it would behoove the conversation if all the Italians took their goats and cheeses and wines and had a place where they could discuss their wants and needs before they come to the table to discuss the world's needs.
Yes.
All right, I disagree with that.
Okay.
And the reason is because it creates isolation. You're isolating people again. You're now doing something that is not helping the future.
I'm not imposing that on these fictional Italians or these hypothetical Italians. What I'm suggesting is that
you, the royal you, like that creates the issue
with some of these terminologies. So what I'm saying is, as long as they have the freedom and the agency to do so, you will have better success at the coalition building you need to.
But the agency is that they come to the table.
Sure. And do all Italians believe the same thing? Do they not need to perhaps get their notes and ducks in order?
Why do the Italians have to get their notes?
Because you suggest a different demographic, and I'd say the same thing. Any demographic.
No, you did. I'm having a comment. I'm trying to explain you're segregating before. No. Yeah. So you don't think I don't know, black people should have a conversation with black people before coming to the table?
I think that they should have the freedom and agency to do so.
Okay, so that is different than what I am suggesting.
That's right to assemble. Yeah.
You are isolating people.
No, I'm giving them the right to assemble, which is different than segregation.
All right, well then we're not talking about the same thing.
And again,
I'm talking about coming to the table.
And coming to the table, that doesn't mean you think there aren't ancillary conversations before that?
Because by doing that, you are not focused on the important element, which is we are one people.
Okay, in that oneness, if there's disparity of conditions, and if there's disparity of resources, how do you address that without addressing the fault lines?
Now you're talking crazy again.
I'm talking crazy because
you're talking about history. You're not talking about.
I'm talking about present. Who says history? I'm talking about right now. There is a deficit.
How was Harvard for you?
What do you mean?
Well, you didn't go, right?
I mean, I attended
because of the disparities. You couldn't afford it, and you were not allowed in it. You weren't given the right to be able to come to this.
I was a recipient of the Pell.
You're also not a citizen, right?
I am a citizen.
How'd you become a citizen?
I was born here, naturalized.
Wait. Are you saying they didn't kick you out?
They did not kick me out.
How'd your parents get here?
My parents immigrated under student visas.
There's no way.
And it was very hard, and they had to be in the.
Wait. It was hard.
So
they didn't do it.
No. It was prohibitive, and increasingly so with time.
Yeah.
And they had to be the best of their generation.
So they got here.
Qualify.
So you think so?
They had to be the recipients of both wealth privilege, class privilege, and education.
Wait, they had wealth?
Freedom of movement back in the 50s and 60s and
How
international
did they get
lines.
wealth?
I mean, That is a long and involved story that we don't have time for.
I'm so confused though. You were just saying that everyone's they're not privileged and they they don't have
That is not what I
resources.
said. I said there's disparity of resources.
Yeah, there's disparity. So I know what you're saying. Your wealthy family actually distributed their wealth to help all the people that needed it.
I mean, they tried, certainly.
So your family is basically broke because you gave all your money away to help rise everybody
I'm
equally.
uncomfortable with this at this point because this is a lot of assumption here.
I'm not assuming anything. I'm making points. The point is every freaking person in the world in one way or another has disparities. And you can't be like, this entire friggin' group has disparities. Every single, just because you are Asian, now you have all of these disparities. So now we have to bring all the Asians together. Come here. Come on, Asians.
How do we address disparities if not discussing them?
Because they are disparities, period.
Okay.
They are not Asian disparities. They're not Black disparities. They're not Italian disparities of the Italians coming over. I know it's only been 200 years, but the Italians came over and got murdered.
Sure. And
right? And so did the Irish. The Irish weren't even considered Caucasian.
And how did that change? How did
it eventually changed?
How?
It doesn't matter that it did change. My point is that
are we erasing the notion of cultural groups in power blocks that changed that?
But again, if I go into that conversation, I am now talking about history. And my point is that history doesn't matter. We should focus on, we all have the disparities. How do we go? What would be something that is true? What is something that makes us a united front?
Sure.
You can't go, well, the Black people had slavery in America. Oh, so the Jews don't get any. So do we have to focus on the Jewish people being slaves? No. Black people in America were slaves. Yeah, but they weren't the first slaves. Who else were slaves? So my people, okay, Italians were definitely slaves.
Okay.
So do I have disparities? No, you're white, so you're doing great. Oh, but Italy is poor. Greece is bankrupt.
Okay. And
so disparities. We got disparities we got to talk about.
And
so are there disparities as on par with these people's disparities?
What's the context of conversation?
No, it doesn't matter. That's my point. If you go, it doesn't. Because the moment you say these people in this area had these disparities, are their disparities worth more attention than other people?
What is the context? If we're having a conversation,
Black people today,
and
saying they have slavery 400 years ago.
Is this a UN meeting?
Listen,
is this a national debate? What is the context of the conversation?
To come to the table.
Yeah, but who?
Who is the world table to create a peaceful future?
I think that when we get into these broad terms, it's all well and good to have these high-minded statements, but it prevents the actual rubber meeting the road, the meat and potatoes arguments that build the future in question.
I do not believe in isolating people and then everyone pointing fingers and going, well, I have to get my share of the pie before you get your pie because we had slavery. Listen, there are still slaves. There are still slaves today.
Oh, yeah.
So do we focus on them before we focus on, say, American Black people?
Again, is it Americans having this conversation? Because I can tell you the answer is no.
So what you're saying is Black people in different areas would have to have a conversation away from Black people in America.
I'm saying the Afro-British struggle is very different from the American Black struggle.
So who gets the more important focus when we come to the table?
They're separate. Again, there's this table. Who is the table? Where is this table being held?
The world table is the discussion for that's. Remember when we started this conversation? We were talking about how do we bring people to the table to talk about the future? It doesn't fucking matter where it is state-wise. It's a fake table about bringing the potential for future. And then you said, well, everyone should be able to have their own separate conversation. And I go, but that would be negating the purpose of the table. And you go, well, everyone has disparities. And you're like, and I said, that's ridiculous because it should be, we have disparities, right? Everybody has issues. So how do we fix the issues in general So there is no slavery. So there is no poverty. So there is right. So there is no war. It doesn't matter that Yemen has a war and Israel has a war and Canada had a war and this right. It matters that war exists.
Sure.
So we don't look at Palestine and go, well, they're in a war, so we got to give them. No, war sucks. How do we get rid of war? That's the conversation that should be at the table. Not, well, the Civil War happened. So should we talk about that?
I think that we have to have a lot of different conversations, and the state of conversation in general is at a decline right now because discourse isn't great at the moment.
Because everyone is focused on, well, we lost people in the Civil War. And I'm using it as an example. It's obviously not the fight we're having. We shouldn't be focusing on, we lost people in the Civil War. We should be focusing on, we shouldn't have war. And we shouldn't be focusing on, well, we were friggin' slaves for 400 years in America. We should be focusing on slavery is terrible. We have to abolish it and never have that happen again. You can't go, well, Asians have to get a higher number for the SAT. Black people have to get a lower number, right? We should go, why don't we just have education? If we argue those little things, we're pinching at stuff that has nothing to do with people being one. We're arguing with the inconsistencies of human nature that has designated us to these faults. That is, you look this way and you were raised that way. And that is not how we move forward. You are not an Indian. I am not an Indian. They are not Greek. They are not this, right? Like, we're not supposed to look at it that way.
I disagree in this fundamental precept, and it's that I don't think we fix today's problems, let alone get to tomorrow's goals.
Until we fix the past.
Until we fix the present. And sometimes that requires unpacking the past. And I think that it has become a very easy tool for a lot of people who want to mislead. Again, I'm not saying you, I'm saying other parties who have very similar line rhetoric.
Wait, pause, because you're actually misquoting me. I have never said don't discuss the history.
Okay.
I'm saying don't live with the history being the present. If
That's
we look at the history, what?
That's not a choice for most people, Thomas.
Listen, are we still affected by, say, Genghis Khan's war?
By his war? No.
Okay. Is war bad?
Yes.
All right, so should we be focusing on fucking Genghis Khan, or we should be focusing on not having war?
Agreed on the latter point. Yes. But
that's my point. So we look at history and we go, what was bad?
Sure.
And then we fix it across the table. We don't.
But sometimes this not that simple. There are things that are now.
If we make the choice to do so because we got to the moon, which means together as a people, we can make anything happen. We created agriculture. We created currency. We created medicine.
I agree.
We did all these things as people.
We've also backslid as people. And I'm not saying
so we should focus on the backsliding.
No, but I'm saying a lot of how we backslide and how we sabotage progress.
Yeah, we're going to sabotage it.
We blow by the existing in favor of generalist points.
So should we look at the history and say, why don't we stop backsliding and start going, well, what's causing us to backslide so we could stop backsliding so we can move forward?
But that would be focusing on the past, wouldn't it?
No, it wouldn't. You look at the past, you go, we backslid. So how do we not backslide? If you look at the past and go, Italians were murdered.
Disagreement is what I'm hearing.
If we're Italians and we were murdered when we came to the Five Corners, should we stop Italians from being murdered? That's not the discussion we should have based on history. It should be, you shouldn't murder people.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't look at history and then focus on what has happened. You focused on how not to have that happen again.
Or how it has contributed to current conditions.
No, because once we acknowledge that something was terrible and we start focusing on how to create a prosperous society of one, then it doesn't matter that 6 generations ago it was bad.
But how do you prevent that unless you take preventative measures? Again, it seems, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it seems that you're proposing almost a postmodernist take, which is what has come before doesn't matter. Focus on out-of-the-box thinking going forward and the future, because past does not predicate future. That should not be what dictates course of action. I am much more of a modernist. No, I misunderstood you.
That is please terribly wrong.
Okay, please clarify.
If I'm going to layman it, okay,
Sure.
we look at history and we go, what is not working? What is bad? Then we go, how do we make a plan to change said thing that is bad so that we can focus on making a better future?
And how is that not what I've been proposing this whole time?
Because you're saying we have to look at what happened in the past and fix that because there's disparities.
No, I said we have to look at what happened in the past and how it dictates present conditions to address present conditions so that we can get to the future we want, which is not the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think, because addressing present means fixing what happened in the past. That's usually where that conversation goes.
No, that's you putting that on me. I didn't say
So
that.
reparations isn't a thing.
I'm not going to say whether reparations is a thing or isn't. I'm
I'm
saying I
saying
disagree.
reparations to fix the history
Okay,
is important for the present.
but that's a loaded statement. What I'm trying to say
is that, would that be fixing the present? If we go, well, let's give you reparations.
a
Is
lot of different
bringing the SAT scores down for some people and higher for others, and then leaving it normal.
I'm not agreeing with you because, dude, that term means different things to different people, and I'm not going to get mired in
reparations.
Okay, so
Bellezza is a wealthy family that comes from royalty. I'm not royal anymore.
Sure.
Because there were wars.
Right.
I want the Greeks to pay for me.
Because we don't do that king shit here. People fawning over Charles notwithstanding. We fought a war.
And I want reparations. I lost my royalty.
I welcome you to pursue that back in Italy if you want.
On a real level, I would think that person was insane if they said
right. But that's not what we're talking about, is it?
Yes, we are.
No.
We're talking about
that is a false equivalency.
We're taking the past and fix it right now, right? And make it everyone that got suffered in the past, make them whole, and then move forward. Is that an accurate statement?
No.
So you don't want to make anyone whole?
No. I didn't say that either. You've sort of tried, I don't know if this is the intent, but this is a false dichotomy. What I've said is, in order to remotely address, whether it's fix or not, fix is pretty lofty to me, frankly, when it comes to the things we're talking about here. But in order to begin to address some of the things in the present, you have to look at how that occurs and then address it.
Yeah, but you don't have to
one version of what you said. And again, I think that you're very charged on that topic, and I agree with you for the most part on that, which is why it's very odd that we're disagreeing on this.
Well, because
I think we're getting hung up on nuance.
Present, but what does that mean when you say change the present? Who do we change? Who
Ready?
gets the benefit?
Flint, Michigan doesn't have clean water. Fucking fix it.
No. Fix clean water.
No. You can't fix clean water as just a general broad stroke.
Yes.
That's very highfalutin. What you can do is you can say, there is a specific issue here that needs funds and addressed that has been neglected by an inept state and needs to be
only them.
No one said only.
I said fix clean water. You said no, they need it now.
You cannot fix clean water in general as just a general sweeping thing. You have to target the places that require reform and then address that. Especially with the state of infrastructure in this country, there are so many different places that are fine and so many other places that are not. You can't just hand wave and go, we're going to create a national standard. We don't have a national standard for
I'm not
policing.
talking national. I'm talking world.
Okay, and that gets even more scope creep.
But I don't care that it gets more
resources.
No, listen. No, I disagree with you because the goal is to help the world. So how do we come together as a world? I am not an American, right?
Okay.
I don't believe in country. I don't believe there are countries. I know they exist. I know we have the laws and the rules. I know there are fake. I've never seen a border. Let's put it that way. I've never seen lines drawn on the ground.
And philosophically, at least in the abstract, I agree with you. But
I think
the fact of the matter is, any project.
But what you're saying right now is the reason I don't believe my dream of world peace can exist. And it's because you're thinking about America and you're thinking about a small state. I'm thinking about the whole world. But no, because you told me my idea is crazy because now we're you basically said it's impossible because you're thinking on a grander scale. You need to focus on the little things. Where I'm saying Why can't we get the world to come together to start fixing the clean water issue? Why can't we? And that is what we should be talking about at the table, not America. Right?
Okay. And then when you get into that as to the why can't we's for those global takes, right?
Yeah,
Then we
we
have to
gotta
start
look at
talking about
America.
no, that's not where I'm going at all.
Okay.
Then we
I
have to
hope
start
not.
talking about the World Trade Organization and things
No,
like that.
why? Why the World
Because-
Trade?
Because the oligarchs who control the wealth and thus are apportioning that.
Okay,
at the
so now we're not
detriment-
talking about collecting the world as one. We're talking about finance, currency, people that control things. So we're not
Yes.
talking about bringing people together. We're talking about a group of people.
We're talking about the people who prevent the coming together of such things by balkanization of resources.
So what's the solution? Come together as a group, as a one people, and take them down.
Yes. And
Okay.
there are some tangibles to discuss with that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now that's the plan you have to work on.
Sure.
Okay, but we don't need to focus on it and then bring certain people. I don't need to bring Michigan up first to help the world, because there are people in Africa and other countries where they don't have water.
I think that there are many battlefronts on these sorts of things, and there's some things that we
Of
have
course
to attack
there
in
are,
macro.
but the
There are certain
solution
things-
is no.
The solution is not always macro. The solution sometimes has to be micro.
The micro comes at the macro level. So if we
micro
have
came at the macro level, we wouldn't be having a lot of the conversations we're
is
having.
what I'm Savan, what I'm saying is, okay, if we focus only on Michigan first,
Right. Then
we're
we're
not
just
we're not solving the issue. But if we could come together as a world, imagine the smartest people in the world who understand clean water come together, and then the smartest people in the world who understand irrigation and everything else, and then the smartest, right? And they come together and they find solutions on a micro level, and then they could take that and put it to the world itself.
Sure.
But if we just go to fucking Michigan and be like, let's help those people, we're not thinking about people. We're thinking about Michigan and not the bigger picture. But if you can figure out the bigger picture, then you can actually isolate it to the smaller issues. It's like cancer. Do we solve
while waiting for macro solutions?
Do we heal cancer, or do we heal just we figure out how to fix kidney cancer? No. How do we heal? How do we cure cancer? And then how do we put that to the separate areas of cancer?
I would argue, and again, your experience is going to be different than mine on this, and that's a granted. You know, I have not experienced it personally. I've had family who've experienced it, but I would argue that oncologists and whatnot have to train in the specific types of cancers they're fighting.
Well, now you're talking about something different than what I'm talking about.
Well, you made the metaphor, so I'm going there.
No, because you're saying there are different areas of cancer research. I understand that. Those would be Michigan.
Yes. And
so if we cure cancer and then we say, how do we implement that to the smaller cancers? That's the bigger solution.
Okay.
If we just focus, my mom had brain cancer. Do I think they should just focus on brain cancer? No.
No one's saying that we should focus on.
You just said it. You said Michigan.
No. What I said was we have to target certain things. That doesn't mean to the detriment of ever focusing on macro solutions. I'm saying we have to work both angles, micro and macro.
If we put all our resources into the bigger picture, we can then attack the little things. If we focus only on the little things,
I think there's a balance between those two that is not one or the other. You and I are going to disagree on that.
Like Michigan right now should have their people come together as a state and start pooling money and doing what they can to start researching. And while they're handling their own, right? Because people have to come together and deal with their own people, right? As stated earlier. Okay.
That is
the world
intent with which I stated that, but okay.
Well, yeah, because you were saying Italians with the goats should have a place that they feel safe and free.
You said Italians with goats.
Well, because I'm not going to say black people, because
okay.
You were saying black and Asians without saying black and Asians. You were saying communities.
I was saying
of people.
Various groups of people.
Various groups. So Michigan is a various group. They're their own group.
And they have different stipulations and needs about their assembly as well.
And they should focus on their own thing, right? We shouldn't help them.
That is not what I said.
So we should help them.
Yes.
Okay. How do we help them best? By
That's where you
giving
and I
all our
disagree.
resources to them, or do we go, how do we help the world?
Have you ever heard the expression, the perfect is the enemy of the good?
I understand that there should be some resources dedicated to them.
Okay, because then if you
But
understand that, then
what
why
about
are we-
should we have resources dedicated to other people, or are we only focused the micro on Michigan?
at what point did I ever say we should only focus on a single micro
Savan,
or
that's
just
my
the micro?
point. You
Right.
can't give a lot of resources spread out into a whole bunch of little areas, because then the main big source is being taken away from. If you're saying Michigan needs a couple of resources and we're going to focus on Michigan, that's one thing. But Michigan is not the only place with bad water. What I'm
Agreed.
saying, but we don't agree, because you're saying the little thing should get some focus too, and the big thing. What I'm saying is give the big thing all the focus, so then they can attack all the little things.
It
Because,
rarely shakes out like that, is my concern.
again, that's a no, right? That is the way of basically saying we have to focus on the present because of the history.
No,
I'm saying,
I'm
how do we
saying
focus on making that thing happen?
I'm saying that there is a way to balance the two that does not equate to only focus on the little or
But
only focus on the big.
if you separate the resources into all of the areas of water cleaning that need help, you are taking away from the progression and the progress of finding the true solution, because each situation has its own variables. But if you figure out a major solution, you can then take that and then slightly adjust them as needed to the smaller solutions.
And anyone that dies in drought in the meantime,
they're dying now.
Right. So acceptable losses until we come to the macro solution.
The meteor is coming, Savan.
I understand that. And I'm saying there's a balance between perfect and good and macro and micro that addresses both. There's no
you're
perfect.
not focused on the future. You're focused on the present, and you're focused on the history. I'm saying to focus on the future, right? But you're saying that becomes an issue. And I'm saying, well, then what is the solution to make that work? And you're saying the same stuff as the past. You're saying
not what I'm saying.
You're saying you have to give time.
How much speaking have I spent on this in this call?
What?
How much time have I actually spoken on this?
We've been talking for a half hour about it.
We've been talking. How much have I spent on that talking?
I don't know. Your whole life?
Not much. If you want me to clarify my position, it is not repetition of the past. But we would have to have
I never said it was repetition of the past. I said it was a focus on the past.
And I'm saying we'd have to have a non-Boolean conversation that has more room for perspective than just your way or my way.
Well, I don't believe it should be my way or your way. I believe this is a way. And then you said that's very difficult. And then I said, but how do we make that work then?
And I think there's a spectrum between that and other positions. There's positions that are parallel.
There's always positions.
And my point is there's a spectrum there. And it may not always match the exact wording you want to align to that trajectory, but maybe very much in line with that trajectory.
Maybe, but I'm looking for a solution for a problem, and your solution is the smaller problems because you don't want those people to die of drought, right?
For one example, there's a lot of examples, but yes.
Right. But what I'm saying is if we're going to cure cancer and we put all resources into brain cancer, we're not going to cure cancer.
Sure. But on the other hand, most cancer research is not done in the macro. And you might say that's the problem, but most of the problem. But most of the progress that's occurred has been in the micro and how it interacts with this, that, or that organ.
But for the thing they're studying.
Right.
What I'm saying is you can keep those going.
Right.
But you should bring the best of the best of the best
to get
the best.
Okay? And we don't disagree on that. See, this is the distinction between a spectrum of perspective and a false dichotomy. We are not actually in disagreement except in terms. We actually agree on a lot. We seem to have gotten hung up on terminology. I don't disagree that the best of the best of the best should be addressing these problems in macro.
Yeah. But the
You
way
are the
you're
one inserting the past in my every assertion. I said that once. I tried to clarify twice, and we've spent the majority of this conversation.
so you don't so you're not interested in the past.
I didn't say that, and I don't think that that's. I think that you have a very Boolean take on that, and I think that
No.
there's a spectrum here.
What is your position on the past? Does it matter or does it not matter?
The past does matter.
Okay, now don't go any further.
Sure.
We gotta fucking learn your words.
Sure.
We gotta understand your brain.
Sure.
So just so I'm clear, the past matters. That's your stance.
Yes.
Okay. Should we fix the issues of the past?
You cannot fix the issues of the past in the past. You can only address the
Wait. You're
ramifications.
going much. You're not answering the questions.
Sure. Okay. No, we cannot fix the past in the sense that you're presenting it.
Are you saying that we should fix the present of all the bad that has happened in the past?
We should try. It's impossible to fix.
That's where we disagree. And that is why there is no future for this world. Because of that mentality right there.
Again, you've presented me a Boolean, and I don't agree with that Boolean.
Okay.
I'm not saying.
We'll ask you again.
Sure.
Do you believe the past is important or not important?
I believe the past is important.
Should we fix the issues of the past?
As long as you don't provide the word all, yes, we should fix the issues of the past as they exist in the present and contribute to present situations. That's not changing the past because nobody can do that. We're not.
I'm not saying we can change the past.
All right. So, but we should address the issues.
But we should address the. Should we address them as a society, or should we address the inconsistencies of specific smaller communities only?
Again, there's a false dichotomy. I think we should address them as a society, but that again, that does not preclude addressing them in smaller communities.
See, are you saying the smaller communities deserve the most attention?
No.
And the bigger issue deserves some attention?
That's not what I said.
No, that's why I'm saying, do you?
And I'm saying no.
No, you said that's not what I said. As if I'm saying that's what you said.
I said no before that, and then.
All right, but that's not what I said. It has nothing to do with my question.
I'm not saying that's what you said. I'm saying no.
All right. Because when you say that's not what I said, then my brain goes into, well, like, now I have to understand what you said because you're not on that.
For whatever reason, the mic didn't pick up when I said no just before that.
Oh, you don't have a Paul over there?
No.
Okay. So, by the way, I'm not angry. I'm just
no.
I'm in thought.
We're animated. We're both animated people.
Yeah. If anyone's listening, Savan and I are friends. We've known each other for what, 2-3 minutes? That's a lifetime in some cultures.
That's true. Over a decade.
Look, I just needed milk. All right. What I feel you are presenting is that there has been an inconsistency in the way we treat certain groups of people in the past. And somehow a majority of change has not actually influenced those people. And if it has influenced those people, they are at the punishment of what history has given them. So they're at a disadvantage. And we should try to fix those people to help bring them up to a level of other people that exist, whatever that community is.
Yes.
And that's where we disagree.
Sure.
Because I think all people should be brought up to that level. That should be all people should have an opportunity.
But we don't disagree on that either.
All communities are the same, but all people are the same, as in we are all valued. The disparity of
conditions, all handicapped people aren't under the same conditions. They have different forms of
Are they people or not people?
They are all people. And they're all.
So do they deserve to have a life that is valued to them or not deserve?
They do.
All right. Are you a handicapped person?
No, I'm not.
So do you deserve to have a life that is healthy and good?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the difference between you and the person in a wheelchair?
Simply put, I have different capabilities, and society has built certain structures that service my needs better than theirs.
So what you're saying,
the variety of those is where that needs to be addressed.
So now I feel we're on the same picture, but you're looking at individuals. I'm looking at people. Right.
You
So
cannot address the disparate needs of those people
no,
without
hear me out.
addressing
Hear me
them.
out.
Sure.
People should have access.
Yes.
Okay. That's my stance.
Right.
But I don't think people who are handicapped should have access. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
I don't think we
I
should
do,
go,
but I'm not
oh,
100%
you're in a wheelchair, so you need access. Right? Well, what about people that are blind?
They're going to need a different type of access.
And that's why I'm saying the issue is people need access. It shouldn't be people in wheelchairs need access. It's people need access.
Again, I think we're getting lost on how we present the
No,
argument.
I understand that. I'm using this because I think we are on the same page. But my issue is that people focus on the handicapped person, and that is not the solution. The solution is the access,
Right.
and whatever that is
needs to be addressed in a spectrum. For
example, if we look at the Black community, which I don't agree with the statement I'm about to say, is they have a wealth disparage, right? They have trouble with wealth, but there are wealthy Black people. And then people go, yeah, but not the majority. Okay. But is the issue that Black people don't have wealth or that people should have wealth?
I think there's a better terminology for this, economic literacy. And I think that is...
Well, I do agree, but I think all people should have
economic literacy.
The financial IQ.
And I think that there are programs in place that should secure that for the status quo, and that those who are marginalized in various groups do not have...
We almost agreed.
I know.
And you had to start isolating. There should be free programs or even whatever programs
there should
that
be
have
a range of programs for economic literacy
for all communities.
I agree.
All right. But if people start making choices for just a community, that's where I feel we are doing very little to help society. And the reason is because now we are isolating. We are saying they have less value. But
there's a meme I'd like to reference.
Go ahead.
You might be familiar with it. It's one with a fence. It's very popular.
Crates. Ugh.
Yeah. But let's put it this way. How would you address the different disparity of access there? It's very evocative for the point. Granted, it's stupid. It's a fucking meme. But it conveys the point that there's a disparity of access, and not all disparities of access are the same. And the only way to address that is not with a singular line plank, but with different...
I'll tell you why that meme is stupid.
Sure.
There's a child on one of the crates.
Okay.
Stupid.
All right. So say it's a midget as opposed to a child.
First of all, you're not allowed to say that word. It's a little person.
Actually, Mr. Dinklage and a number of other prominent spokespeople would disagree.
Oh, they said you could say the midget?
They find little person even more disparaging.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow, that's very big of them.
All
right, let's say it's Peter Dinklage is on that crate.
Sure.
He, right, should have two crates, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I don't agree.
Okay.
Because in that situation, it's a fence looking at a ball game.
All right.
He should have access, but why the fence?
Sure. The meme is stupid because it's a fence, not because Peter Dinklage needs two crates, right?
Yeah.
So,
Peter Dinklage doesn't need two crates. He needs to have access to the game.
So
and stealing a ticket to watch the game by cheating and looking over a fence is not the solution. The solution is there are stairs for you. There are entrances for you. There are walkways for you.
And there are
bathrooms for you. Right?
And there are wheelchair ramps. And making sure there are wheelchair ramps for that.
No, we don't have to say wheelchair ramps.
There are ramps.
No, there's access. And whatever that looks like is what it looks like.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying. I know it sounds crazy, but if you focus on the individual, you're taking away the value of others. If you go, people with wheelchairs need access, then what about blind people? Oh, and blind people need access too. Okay, but what about people with no arms? Oh, no. It's access. And that way of
but
thinking helps us move forward.
but the problem is the
there
nature
is
of those
no
individuals.
problem.
Okay, Thomas, I would contend that the problem is without focusing on those individuals, you don't get the disparate forms of access in question, which
I'm not
do.
disagreeing with that statement. What I'm saying is by focusing on those things, we're not thinking progressively. We're not thinking about the future, because we should be, every single person is equally valued.
I don't
So
think it takes away value to make sure that those who have disparate needs are addressed.
All right. Well, where's my access then? Why do I get a special walkway?
Are you able-bodied?
Well, actually, I'm not. I am
Okay.
disabled because
Okay.
I have I have restrictive lung disease, and
Okay.
I have one kidney, so I am handicapped. Right,
So
I have a disability, but I want a walkway that says it is specifically for people with restrictive lung disease and I want another walkway that's designated for one kidney people.
are you doing that to be absurdist or because you need that?
I need that because
Okay.
I feel less seen and forgotten,
But is it
because
affecting your
everyone
access?
gave time to a wheelchair access
But is it
ramp.
affecting your access or is it
Yes.
affecting your seenness?
No, because I don't have the access that I need to go to that ball game.
Because you
I
don't
need
feel it's-
access that does not require me to walk up an incline. I
Okay.
need stairs that are flat,
Or an elevator.
or I need an elevator, but I need it to specifically be called the restrictive lung disease elevator.
I think that if you put in a ramp that fits the specifications and don't label it a wheelchair ramp, but it is a ramp, then I think that that is still a ramp.
Yeah.
And I don't think that takes away from you as somebody with restrictive lung disease with access to an elevator.
What I'm saying is by going, this wheelchair person needs access, we're taking away the value of other people, because you have to give them value by now going to every single group that needs access, when in reality we need access.
I think there's something to what you're saying when things get corporate and things get proceduralized in a certain way.
Well, because it
I have the
isolates
same
people.
feelings. Let's put it this way. Here's where I agree with you, right? Take corporate DEI, which is a very hot button term these days, right? And like we lived through this in the 90s.
By the way, thank you for being DEI today.
So the point is, we lived through this in the 90s when the term was political correctness. And now, again, like so many other things like this, it's begun with the best of intentions. It's begun with fantastic, lofty ideals, but then the implementation of it is shit. And it just becomes complete garbage as it gets regurgitated and processed by rote and then utilized and picked over by corporate lawyers into what is the least liability inducing thing that we can present into the workplace environment, right?
Yeah.
And we experience that with political correctness and globalization and all of these things. And now DEI has gone through literally the same life cycle where it's fantastic intentions, terrible implementation, entropy sets in, worse implementation, bad faith actors seize upon it, and then finally blowback and combustion, right? And we've seen this process.
Yeah, but I feel that's different than what I'm trying to implement, what I'm saying.
I'm going to assert that there is a overlap there.
I don't think so.
I think that where we're agreeing, at least somewhat, is that the implementation of these things where you say we should be focusing on the macro because the micro is where we lose it, right?
No, that was what resources and coming to the table.
And that's where I'm making, let me continue the point if I may. That's where I say is it's a process, and that's where we lose the thread in the ways that you're talking about, much like what I just asserted about the corporatization of DEI and other progressive reforms. Is it becomes this rote process, it becomes this parliamentary bullshit that then just gets mired. And if that's what you're saying, then I can agree with you on that.
Would you say your point of view is ultimately the house is on fire, so we don't have to squirt the water on all the other houses?
More or less, there are different.
Now
fires.
I know we are not on the same page, because that's not what I'm talking about.
I understand that. I would invite you to consider we can agree on a lot,
yeah,
and still have points of disagreement.
we can, but I also don't think we are talking about the same thing. And you are presenting a position that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Okay. I don't
because
agree, obviously, but
well,
I'm open-minded enough to hear you on
all
this.
right. So again, just to be clear, there's a meme out there with the houses, and then there's one house on fire, and some people say, "Hey, we're all the same people, and you should be spraying all the houses with water when one house needs it because they have the fire, and we should focus everything on that." And that's what your standpoint is, right?
I think that there's a difference between the Booleans as presented, and I think that you can say, "Hey, the amount of water that would take to put that one house on fire out is not the entirety of the water for everyone. Ergo, you're not going to decrease the entirety of the water for everyone, but a targeted blast can address that issue
Okay.
rather than trying to irrigate the entire water plane
Yeah,
of
yeah.
every house."
Whatever you say from this point on, it doesn't matter, because what you're talking about has nothing to do with what I'm actually talking about. What I'm talking about is that house is on fire. So the solution should be, how do we stop houses from going on fire? How do we put out houses quicker, right? For everybody.
Sure.
So that's what I am presenting, right? You're looking at that house needs attention. I'm saying, how do we stop in the future houses going on fire, period? Or if we can't do that,
More
how
efficiently
do we
address
put
them.
a house? That's why I'm looking at the future in that
And I
sense.
would argue that part of parsing that house needs attention, let's do that as a
But I'm
targeted
not
blast.
talking about the
Wait,
house,
wait,
is
wait.
what I'm saying.
Let me finish the thought here, please. Part of that is what gets you to your more efficient solutions.
Sure, but the house doesn't matter to me
I-
in this conversation,
Sure.
because it of course that house needs to be put out first.
Right. I'm not getting pedantic with you, but I'm saying there is a necessary component in that discussion that directly affects what you're talking about, which is how you get to more efficient solutions.
Can I ask you how many people in your family work for or have volunteered for the fire department before I tell you that not only were my family chiefs in the fire department and all this other stuff?
None that I recall.
Oh, none. Okay, good. So what you're saying is not necessarily true. Okay. They don't use a house burning to figure out how to make that better while putting the house out.
Insert the metaphor of your choice.
No, but what I'm saying is, if we go to Michigan and fix their water problem, that isn't necessarily going to fix the water problem. That's going to fix Michigan's problem. They don't fix it and go, "Oh, we fixed this. Now we can fix everybody."
Okay. If we want to
They do it afterwards, though. They
So
look. Oh, go ahead.
my mother worked in the economic and statistical analysis of the implementation for call waiting, caller ID, streaming media, and so on at Belcor. The
Okay.
statistical analysis in question addressed multiple problems across these things in implementation. All right.
Yep. Mhm.
And with that, that had specific solutions that applied to more than just the instance in question in those locations. I'm just talking about using the micro reasoning in macro form. That's all. And it is also where they develop packet-based internet and things like that. Now, I can
So
sit
you're
here.
saying it was a residual of the effort, and not necessarily that it was the effort. So it wasn't like they were doing the research to figure it out. It's just that by doing it, they realized XYZ can also happen. Sort of like insulin. They weren't trying to make insulin. It
It's
just
a
so
little bit more
happened.
intentional than that. It's the process of refining in the micro creates global truths that
Okay,
then
so
can be
their
applied to
purpose
macro.
was to refine, though.
Yes.
All right. So that makes that, I would say that's not the same thing, because they are purposefully trying to refine. If they weren't trying to refine in general, but they were trying to refine a very specific thing, then your example would be the same as what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But you're saying if I'm
I'm talking
clear,
about rollout. So
yeah, but they
rollout,
purposefully went in to refine.
well, it was the initial forays in these things. So yes and no.
So they were studying it.
Yes, of course, to
So
make
that's
it a
different
product.
than fixing Michigan of its if they went to Michigan with the sole purpose of trying to figure out how to fix water and make it clean globally, and they use Michigan as their starting point, that would be what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because they would be purposefully trying to fix the global situation. They didn't just happen to fix Michigan
Right.
and then go, oh, this
And
led to the cure of water.
I
Right?
think that that can be worked into specific response across the board when there's always a
Oh,
perspective of what
they
can we
didn't
take
they didn't
away?
try to make the microwave, but it did come out of something else. They didn't try
Right.
to make the X-ray, but it did come from something else. I understand that you can have an effect or something from something, but if that's not your intent, it's a very slow process. If your intent is to cure cancer, I think that's a better hopeful journey, right? But
I don't think
imagine the government said, listen, we're only going to focus on lung cancer. Like that would be an insane statement.
sure.
Now,
But on the
right?
other hand, we're going to focus on lung cancer reforms in former coal mining towns, for example, is a sensible maneuver. And it's apropos for the situation.
If they did that with the intention of curing cancer, it would be what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's why we're not talking about the same thing.
Okay.
I'm talking about the world as one. You're focused on smaller groups or individuals or
My
situations.
focus is the world is not one, but it will never get to one until we address those things.
I
I have the
disagree.
goal to address those things to get us to a place where we can have that Starfleet level reality.
We will not get there because of the mentality, and I'm not knocking you on this, but what you're saying is the reason we will not get to the future, because we are focusing on individuals and not people.
Let's, if I may, take a historical example, which again, you're going to tell me is focusing on the past,
Correct.
but it's in macro, it's a meta conversation about this dispute we're having.
Go ahead.
Okay. Post W. Bush administration, the Clintons had many flaws. And I'm not sitting here going, I'm going to cape for the Clintons. But any administration is more than the sum of its individual people at top, you know? The Clinton administration was responsible for numerous economic reforms. We had the largest national surplus in this country's history.
Correct.
We had environmental reforms, economic reforms. We had so much going right for us.
Mhm.
And then it was through both macro and micro thinking, because these things are not necessarily at odds. Granted, there's limitations of resources, but most of those reforms were created with the mentalities of we're going to attack the problem two ways. We're going to address the micro and we're going to address the macro. And sometimes they were misguided, and certainly some things under the Clinton administration were deeply misguided, and certain things weren't. And then W. Bush and Cheney.
Okay. So did it work?
Did what work?
Everything that the Clintons did.
Not everything, certainly, but enough worked.
Some things, right? And then you said,
but then it got sabotaged by people who literally took this from the wait. I'm going to make my point, and then by all means,
I
ask
hope
me
so,
whatever
because
question.
you're not making a point.
I am.
You're making my point.
It got sabotaged by people who took us from the largest national surplus in this country's history to the largest national deficit, amongst the many, many other things we could say. Bottom line being, we don't bring ourselves back to that mentality, to that trajectory, without addressing the individual situations. There's no amount of macro thinking that will fix a concerted sabotage on society like that.
It didn't fix anything.
What didn't fix anything? We haven't been able to address that situation because there is no macro thinking that would. We got close with Obama. There were certainly
And
things
then what
that
happened?
And then we got Trump.
Oh, so I don't understand your argument, because if the micro and the macro working together helped during Obama and Clinton, but then they got crappy because you're blaming, and again, I'm not a Republican, but you're blaming another group of people, wouldn't that assume that the micro and macro is not working because it is focused on a specific area, which in this case is America, which in this case is the Democrats or the Republicans? It's always focused to a group. It's not taking in consideration. Imagine we worked on a problem as a one people.
Again, that presupposes that enough people in said coalition are good faith actors and are enough to drown out the bad faith actors.
So how do we get there?
I think we get there by targeting the bad faith actors.
Okay.
You don't cure cancer by going, let's all think about the rest of the body. You cure cancer by going in and attacking the cancer.
What you just said made me so upset. You have no idea. All right.
I'm sorry. And it certainly isn't my intent to upset you.
But the reason is because I don't think you understand cancer to say
Okay.
that statement. Okay. They didn't go in to cure my cancer. They took my insides out.
Right.
They didn't cure my mom's cancer. They stopped her lung cancer and then she died of brain cancer.
Right.
They didn't stop my grandma's cancer. They stopped her lung cancer that turned into spinal cancer that went up to her brain cancer.
Okay.
The reason is because what did they do? They did your brilliant plan. Focus on the cancer that's in the body. They didn't know how to cure cancer. They just knew how to spray somebody with a horrible chemical that not only
puts them through hell,
fucks up your brain, and then you got to listen to your mom on video going, because she can't speak anymore.
Right.
So
I apologize for the deeply flawed metaphor.
Well, no, because it's not that you need to apologize to me. I'm upset because I want people to understand that what you're saying is not accurate. You cannot focus on a thing and expect to cure the issue. You have to say, I need to help this person right now with the resources we have, which is I got to spray you with chemo and I got to do this and I got to put poison in you because that's all we know. But you need experts focused on the solution for cancer.
And at no point have I disputed that you need experts on the macro. I challenge you to find any clip in this where I've said we don't need that.
I know you didn't say your argument is we should be focusing on both.
I'm
that
saying
was your position.
A distribution of resources.
Yeah.
Some for the macro, some for the micro.
Yes, but I don't think, right? Like, for example, with the fire, I'm not saying don't put the fire out.
Right.
But I'm also saying don't try to figure out how to put fires out while putting the fire out. You can't figure out how to cure cancer while trying to poison somebody.
Mm.
You could only give them whatever you can because cancer acts very fast.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear your position, and I don't necessarily disagree.
Yeah.
Again, it's where we disagree is in the nuances of the focus and how.
Well, yeah, because I don't believe in individuals. I believe in people. I believe as a society, it should be Earth. I don't think we should be focusing on Michigan. I think we should be focusing on Earth to help Michigan.
And first of all, I respect where you're coming from with that. I do. I hope you haven't taken any of my statements here.
Oh, no.
In my experience, and this is going to be about the past. In my experience,
we can't do something.
No.
Okay.
In my experience, future change occurs in increments.
I agree with that statement.
And those increments usually revolve around individual people, not around groups, not around macro. Well, I have gone to people, individuals, and because I vetted them and trust them and know they trust me, we can build something and we can do something and enact change and force action.
I agree on your statement, but I don't agree with how to implement it. Because, for example, slavery is terrible.
Agreed.
Yeah. The solution isn't to go to Virginia and stop slavery. The solution is to get people ultimately
to stop slavery.
Stop slavery.
But the emancipation.
But I understand the house needs to be put out. I'm not saying Virginia needs to be helped. I'm not saying that. But if we look at Virginia and slavery, and then today we act as if slavery is still happening in Virginia, we're stupid.
Let me parse one for you, right? So I took a course which addressed, amongst many things, modern slavery, not to be confused with the military-industrial complex, not to be confused with the for-profit prisons. Those are separate conversations entirely because they're so complicated. What?
Or out east.
Well, it was about in other nations, in third world nations, things like that.
Good, because there's still slavery.
The problem is you cannot fight slavery as this giant, grandiose thing. You can, but you only get so far. It is by the individual abolitionists' strategic goals in those arenas, in those theaters, that those slaves get emancipated.
Now, let me blow your mind, because before you go on and add more information to this debate, all right? Again, you're talking about putting out the house. I agree with that statement.
Right. How do
right?
we legislate further so that
Are
slavery is
you
illegal?
ready?
Because
You
slavery is
ready?
already illegal
Well, not everywhere.
in the eyes of most global organizations.
Yes,
Slavery is legal.
but not
Not everywhere.
illegal.
Yeah,
Did you say legal?
illegal.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Some places it's legal still. And some places it's illegal, but they still have it.
Right,
And in some places, they take little kids and they sell them to the highest bidder.
right.
Right. Now, what I'm saying, and I'm not saying don't do the,
Put out.
again,
Yeah, I'm
let's
with
hit
you.
them with the chemo,
Yeah,
right? Let's send in the people that work in that industry to
right.
free fucking people. But there should be the best of the best experts in that field around the world, not America. I don't give a crap
Right, right,
about
right.
America or Canada or the fucking people in Mexico or China. Everybody should go, who are the experts? Let's get them in a room. We'll still continue to fight slavery as it should be. We'll still be fighting to create rules and laws globally. But how do we stop it? Not only so there is no future slavery, but so we can effectively and efficiently
Address
stop it now.
right.
That's my position.
And I agree with that position. It came to a macro group of people looking at this. I don't remember the organization offhand. This class was like 3 years ago, but I could pull down a book and look it up. The point is that organization, amongst others, it wasn't like a unilateral thing, did collect a global group of experts and did look at that and then go, all right, now we're going to start
Now,
targeting and specializing to those
correct.
theaters. So
Which is what I said.
I'm not advocating only put out the fire in the now. I'm not advocating only hit with the chemo. I am advocating do both, split your resources intelligently to do both because you need to address the fires, but you also need to think about how to do this in macro.
I think they should allow the ones that are the experts that are working on it already to continue working on it, but put the top of the top working on the solution.
Sure.
So you should have the experts fighting the symptoms because
Right.
that's all they can do.
Mm,
But you need somebody to figure out how do we stop fucking cancer.
right.
Do you understand? You have the experts who can fight and sometimes cure cancer, but you need the people who understand it's a different brain set.
Oh, yeah. It's to address the problem in macro and to do so with that sort of more than troubleshooting, that
Yeah.
futurist forecasting perspective. I'm with you
Correct.
on that.
Yes.
At no point am I saying don't do that.
Yeah. No, I know we're on the same page as in like splitting the resources, but I think the best of the best globally should come together to fix the micro elements.
And this is not me trying to be the screen door in your submarine, but that brings us to another problem, completely separate from everything we've discussed.
Yeah.
Get a bunch of experts to agree on something.
Well, I think the cream rises, right? So
Yes.
the best of the best will do what's necessary to make something happen. You know, like if you and I are in a room with 6 other people and we go, all right, we gathered here today to write a story about dragons. And someone goes, but we should talk about fish. You're out of the room.
Yes.
That is not what we're here for.
Unless you meant aquatic dragons. Give them like 10 seconds.
Yeah,
no?
right?
All right, get out.
However, that doesn't mean we can't be in that room and someone says, I know we're talking about dragons, but as a secondary arc, what about? And then you go, well, now we have to still be open to discussion, right?
Right.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, if we're writing a fantasy and they're like, yeah, but space, right? Like, it's not sci-fi, you know? But at the end of the day, I don't believe in like, for example, I don't think like England should be focusing on England things. I think the world should come together.
You've chosen a very choice example with that because arguably
I
most
know
of the world has several Independence Days because England focused on English things and made it everybody's problem.
Germany too.
Yeah.
I would say Germany worse.
Right.
Because at least Russia killed all their people by themselves. Stalin, he's a smart man. Well, he was like, I don't want to bother anyone else. I'm just going to focus on killing my own kids and the people here. Oh, by the way, paint over the nice paintings.
Right. The commissar vanishes,
Yeah.
as it were.
But what I'm saying is, and I know it sounds crazy, but when I hear people think only micro,
right,
right, and they're like, well, we got to fix Michigan. No shit.
Right. Can I just say this conversation, which has been fascinating, is sort of an exemplar of so many other discussions I have where I'm forced into a corner where I'm like, I'm not arguing that to the exclusion of this. I'm arguing there should be a balance, and it doesn't matter what group I'm talking to, whether it's politics, whether it's fucking Star Wars fandom, whatever we're talking about. I will try and take a nuanced perspective, and then I will be crucified because you look like the enemy. And I'm like, I'm taking a nuanced perspective.
But see, the thing with nuanced perspectives is you're not finding a solution. You're focused on the problem. Right. So, for example, when I said the world and I said, blah, 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 then you said, well, when it comes to that, you have this problem. Okay. How do we fix that problem so we could go back to the world?
Sure.
Yeah, but getting people in a room, that's difficult because right? That's the nuance, is focused on the problem. I understand me saying if we could get the whole world together to solve this, it would be a great solution. I understand there's steps to that. I understand there are walls to that.
Right.
But my issue is to say no, or to say that would never happen, or it would. It would take a fucking miracle for. To me, I'm not interested in that conversation. I'm interested in solutions that will fail until we succeed. Right?
Can I tell you how I'm being your best friend by being the Dutch uncle in this?
Sure, I guess.
It is the people who raise the problems, not because they're being contrarian, not because they exist to be pains in the ass. Those are separate people that we're not talking about, even though they look similar. It is the people who raise these problems that want to agree with you the most and say, I would like to agree with you, but I don't see a way past this, that force you to engage with that which you are either uncomfortable by or trepidatious to engage with, to get to the other side of breaking that board, of getting through there, that force the solution. You may say they're focused on the problem, but if they force you to contemplate a solution to the point where they can't bitch to you about that problem anymore, then suddenly they have become your greatest ally.
I don't think they're coming up with that quote unquote wall to help me find a solution. I think they are stopping the conversation.
Have I stopped this conversation?
You have not. I believe personally, you have not moved it forward. You have only stayed focused on your position and nuances.
Okay, so let's.
But you did it on purpose because you said you were, which means you weren't trying to understand me. You were trying to counter me.
I disagree with that. I have been trying to understand you. We've been having a very interesting conversation. I have not always understood you, but I've been attempting to in good faith this whole time.
But you just said that you were ultimately being the counter. You were being...
But not because I'm a contrarian or being a piece of shit that doesn't want to have the conversation with you.
I don't mind having... But if you were interested, you would be thinking about the same solutions I am, and not necessarily saying, going back to, history or this.
Have I not also been an active participant in trying to provide certain workarounds where we might arrange the same page or
I'll be
on
honest,
the same page?
I don't feel that is the case.
Then we have very different perspectives on this conversation, which is not surprising.
And that is okay, because our perception is a flaw of the human brain.
Sure. To my mind, I've been actively trying to reach you and not just make you see my point, but also to really see your point and see where our points align.
But that has nothing to do with a solution,
doesn't it?
No, because you're not on my boat. You're on your boat. You're not on my boat.
Okay.
We came to the quote unquote agreement that it should be macro and micro, right? But our philosophies on why are two separate boats.
Sure.
right? But your position still leans more towards the underappreciated, the underdeveloped, and mine is
Not
focused
again,
on.
it's hard to take a hard and fast take on my take on that, given the spectrum of groups and whatnot involved. That's a
Well,
very
some groups don't
either higher
deserve.
or lower.
Some groups don't deserve it, and other
No,
groups do. I get it.
I'm saying that there's a spectrum of need and that there's a spectrum of
Yes.
urgency, and that things do get placed on that spectrum of need and urgency.
Which is not. That's why we're not on the same boat, because we are not having the same conversation.
Okay.
Because remember, my position is I agree that we should be trying to cure the person with kidney cancer, but the focus should be on the macro.
I agree that there should be some focus on the macro. The where and how is where we disagree. And I don't even know that that's true. I think that you've taken a very Boolean stance on my perspective on this.
I feel like that's the word of the day.
You cannot be on my boat because you're on your boat. And I'm like, is there not room to set up shop on your boat for anything other than this is the deck and that is it?
Well, no, because I don't believe we should raise up a community before we move forward.
I don't think we should either. I think that there's a difference between.
Does Savan believe that? Or because the initial nuanced position that you held would agree with that statement?
No, you've stated that my initial nuanced position would agree with that statement.
Pause. I brought up the meme. I said, is your position, your statement, are you saying that we should, the house that's on fire should get the attention because
but not at the expense of research? Every time I've tried to add the appending, you've odd me. So I'm going to address this again.
Because you go on and on.
Not at the expense of macro solutions. I think that there's a balance to these things. And I think that you can do one and do the other without doing disservice to either. Now, granted, time and resources are limited, but you can apportion out. And when you've said, I think the best and the brightest should be reserved for the macro, have I not agreed with you?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean we're on the same boat, though.
Okay.
Like we could go, I love colors together, but that doesn't mean we're on the same boat that red is better than blue.
I would argue that one can address the micro without addressing the micro to the detriment of the macro. And that there is room in spectrum for more than just, are you macro or micro? Are you futurist or are you mired in the past? And that's it.
But again, going back though, a lot of my position is that as soon as you step away from the world as a one unity, and then we focus on little things, little groups or community, and we give them precedence, that's when we don't agree.
We agree on that. That is where we disagree. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that is a betrayal of the future, though. I don't think that.
No, but it is a betrayal of the other people.
I don't think so.
I do think so, because to say somebody deserves more because they're suffering more, that is a disillusioned thought, because we don't know who's truly suffering more. Because just because I see two people fighting doesn't mean I know why they are.
I think that this, if you'll excuse this, a very teacher scolds both kids regardless of who started the fight situation.
That would be wrong.
Because
the teacher is wrong, in my opinion.
Right. Because we do have objective truth on who started the fight.
We don't. We didn't ask a follow-up.
I think we do when it comes to the big picture issues.
And that's the reason
we have an abiding body of knowledge on these matters.
We don't. It's all perceived information.
Yes.
And the objective truth is that you and I are doing a podcast.
Right.
The subjective truth is how we are perceiving one another.
Sure.
So if I see two people fighting, the objective truth is that they are not fighting, they are hitting each other. Because I need a follow-up question to know if they are fighting or are they sparring. Are they playing around? So the teacher is wrong because they did not do a follow-up question.
Sure. And when they do,
now you're investigating.
Right.
And now you could figure out what's wrong or what's not wrong. Or maybe I'm the one who's wrong because I called the police for these two people who are best friends and they're play fighting because they just came out of a wrestling match and they're just like imitating the wrestlers. But I called the cops and the FBI,
Sure.
right? It's
Now,
like looking at Michigan
okay.
and then saying they need the most help because we perceive it that way. But what about a country in Africa? Or what about India? Or what
Sure.
about,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I don't agree with the isolation of and saying, well, they're at a disadvantage. They are at a great disadvantage and they need the most help because we don't know if that's true.
I think we have quite a bit of data on that.
Okay. So when you were dealing with, because you said you dealt with people dying of cancer, right?
Right.
Okay. And I dealt with people.
Sure.
Would you say it was exactly the same experience?
No, of course not.
So for you to perceive information, you have the bias of A, what you believe you know,
Right.
what you actually know,
Sure.
and then what is being shown to you.
Right.
But somebody who is being raped, beaten, starved, whipped, and thrown into a hole in, say, the streets of India, the slums of India, because they were kidnapped, versus a college student who is black complaining about slavery in America.
Sure.
And going, well, we need to help this person because their community was affected by slavery.
Sure.
And they need the attention now.
And
what
then
about
there's
that other person?
And then there's the people who are still getting attacked by the Klan.
Okay, again.
And so, like,
my point is none of that matters, though.
I would argue that it all does matter. It just matters in different ways.
Who are we to dictate that person who just wants to be let out of the hole? The person who just wishes they would die because of their scenario. What about the little girl that got kidnapped? She's white, though. So go fuck. No, you know what? A little boy, a little white boy. He's a guy. He's white. He's probably straight. He doesn't deserve, because there's a black college
I would
student
argue that there is
who's getting their
vast
doctorate.
majority.
There is a black college student who's getting their doctorate in science, and they're having a worse life than that child. But you know what? That child doesn't matter because he's a kid. He's a white kid. He's got benefits. He's got his whole life. He's had advantage. He's 4, but he's also a guy, which means he's evil. I would rather a bear than the guy, right? And this is the problem with perspective. I know you think I'm being crazy right now, but perspective,
hyperbolic, not crazy.
But they're not hyperbolic, though.
No, the scenarios aren't hyperbolic, but the comparison is. Because the comparison, no one is sitting here going, this black college student suffers more than the abducted white boy. All right.
Yeah, but no one cares about the white boy because he's white and he's a boy.
Men
suck. Men deserve to be killed. Bro, you're a dude. And how many times can you talk to people about your feelings?
Fair. But
no one cares about men.
I think there's people who do, but I think
other men, and then they make fun of you.
No.
What's that funny meme? What's that meme where girls are like, "Oh, am I fat? No, baby, you're beautiful." And then
women
they go,
of color have saved me many, many times in these conversations.
Did you say women of color?
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous statement.
As opposed to the
women.
I come from Connecticut.
People?
I could say women, but let's put it this way.
Their people.
My context here is I live in Connecticut. Karens are our major export, okay? Karens and insurance.
I live in Connecticut. But my point is, why is it that there are people of color?
It's a colloquialism, Thomas. We could get hung up about it, or we can accept what I mean by that.
But it's not that I can't accept what you mean by it, because I know what you mean by it. You validated it. You gave it power, but it really has none. Because POC, now if you had said white person, is it less valuable?
No, it's just different.
But is it a different value?
No, Why are we assigning a value when I'm just assigning?
That's my point.
I'm saying
There should be
these
no
things don't assign
value assigned to anyone because we have a preference, a
Not a
bias.
preference, a shared experience versus not. A shared perspective.
No. You're hung up on the she's a black girl and you're hung up on that. What I'm saying is it doesn't matter though in the grand scheme of things that she is a person of color.
I disagree.
That's fine. You're allowed to disagree, but that is why we are stuck in the past.
I think
Because
that
it matters that she
acknowledging the nooks and crannies of existence.
That's a different conversation.
That
is a different. I agree with you that there is nuance and there is,
and I don't think we get forward until we acknowledge this.
The residuals of, but I disagree that they should have the value because everyone has value, and to look at anybody,
his value takes value away from others, and I think that's where the fundamental crux of our disagreement is. I don't think that my making a statement about women of color or people of color and giving that the context and nuance it's due, the shared experience, takes away value from white women or women in general or white people in general.
And I would hope it doesn't, but it does in society.
It doesn't in value. It does in experience and in perspective. And that's the difference.
So me being asked,
different is not unequal. Different is different.
Well, different is different.
Yeah. So
but the values, there are no value differences. And that's my point, is that we shouldn't look at Michigan or Detroit or India or England as if they have different values. I think
but addressing drought in a specific region of India,
again, that is a different point.
Okay, but you can't even know the point I'm making unless you're just going to presuppose that on the basis of what I've said previously.
Can I presuppose it to see if I'm right?
Okay.
We have to address the drought because those people are in danger and they need the help.
That's not the point I've been making. And the problem is we kept getting mired in that as the point I'm actually making.
All right, go for it.
All right. There's the addressing of the thing, and that's one thing. And there's the specific hows of the addressing of the thing that is going to vary in those very disparate conditions. And that's important. That's crucial. It won't end drought overall, but you can't begin to address it if you don't firefight in the land you're on. Which is not the same as fight the fire there because it's on fire. It is, you got to know the terrain.
It's a 2-story house, so we have to approach the fire differently than we approach a single floor house.
Or an apartment complex or whatever the hell else.
Or an apartment. Exactly. Yeah. Right. So it is important to go, hey, it's a 2-story versus a 1-story.
Yeah.
But does a 1-story and a 2-story have a different value?
No.
Do we put out the 2-story or do we put out the 1-story first? Who goes first?
I'm
not saying you did. I'm asking a question. Who goes first? What house do we put out first?
Okay. For starters, how long is it going to take to get there? Second,
let's get rid of the ridiculousness of the fucking nuanceness of it.
Okay.
In this scenario, the houses are literally in the same exact spot. Okay?
Then fight both of them at equal time.
I accept that.
Yeah.
I accept that.
Why would it be anything else from me? Just because I've stated
statement you're stating that some people deserve a little bit more
attention
at first than others.
No. At no point did I say at first. I said these need to be acknowledged. That's it.
Well, now we're talking about the POC thing. I'm talking about the conversation in general.
In general, at no point did I say you need to do this before that. I said we got to do this because we can't do that without this. That's not antecedent.
All right, let's go back to the houses then.
Sure.
We have to pick one that goes first. Who goes first?
Fuck. Flip a coin, I guess, because I refuse to assign value on the basis of something so arbitrary.
Well, you're the chief. You got to fucking say where to put the water first. Who goes first?
2-story house is going to have more residents, presumably, right?
How do you know?
Could be don't. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to get as much information as I can, and I'm going to make a snap decision from there, because if I do nothing, both houses will burn.
So that's my point. The first thing you said is why I think looking at Michigan as the most we have to address them is ridiculous, because no matter what information we have, it's not enough information for us to say they deserve first comings, right? The thing you said next is my point. You have to ask a follow-up question.
Right.
You have to look into it.
You got to get the data. Yeah.
Right. Now, this is the addition to my position. That fire department says we're going to need, there's 2 houses. We know by ourselves we can't do this. So we're going to need fire departments outside of our district to come in and help us.
Sure.
But people don't think like that.
Right. And that's the problem.
And I think that's the thing we have to focus on. How do we change that so we can think?
And I agree. See, we agree more than
now, if you agree with that, then you're on my boat.
Yes, of course I agree. The vast majority of this has been you taking the hill that I'm on and stating that puts me not on your boat.
Well, that's ridiculous, Savan. That's like me fucking saying, look, I agree in the Vietnam War. You do? Well, not personally. Personally, I don't agree with it. No. Because I'm on this stupid fucking hill, I'm going to fight you on this. But I'm going to tell, we're on the same boat, though. No. That's what you just did.
How have I changed my position at any point in this conversation? Have there been any wishy-washy, any waffling?
You didn't say or admit to what I just clarified at the very end now.
I wasn't sure I understood you entirely.
So how can we be on the same boat if you don't understand?
Hang on. I said I wasn't always sure I understood you entirely. But throughout this conversation, I've been like, no, I agree with that goal. I don't agree with how he's getting there or some of the equivalencies he's making. But I agree with that goal.
All right, but for you to be on my boat, you got to agree with the whole kit and caboodle. You can't be on fucking 2 boats. I need you on the boat or on the other boat.
Okay.
We don't get anything done if you're half on the boat, half off the boat.
So treat a lot of this as me qualifying what it takes to be on your boat.
To care about humanity and not break humanity up into individuals. Because individuals get helped by helping humanity. I don't think we should look at the pile and go, there's a black person there, so we have to help them. What about these other people? But they're black. See, you got to look at histories, right? And history has created this present solution where that person right there, because they're black, they're at a disadvantage. Before having a follow-up question. Are you disadvantaged? Oh, well, actually, I'm fucking Kobe Bryant's daughter.
All right, so
I'm a multimillionaire.
So, upon qualification is the real modifier here.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I've been saying that the whole time. Our perception disqualifies our bias. I mean, disqualifies how we are, right? Because we can't look at somebody and say it's a 2-story house, so therefore it has more people in it.
Okay,
we can't do that.
Right, we have to ask follow-up questions.
But you can't go, well, historically.
All right, so let's just
2-story houses have more people in it.
But historically, a certain degree of pedantic questioning has been absolutely used to shut down people in need. Now, that's not to say don't question and qualify the audience.
You must always question and qualify the situation. That's psychology 101.
Yes.
That's leadership 101. And that's management 101.
Yes, but at a certain point, it becomes counterproductive. And that's when you get to more advanced management theory, it absolutely does. You
have to make snap decisions.
Yes.
But you have to make them based on what has already been qualified.
Right.
But if you have a team of 5 people and over the 5 months working with them, you've qualified every situation you possibly can. But then you find yourself with 3 new people and 2 people have left. You are now in a situation where your original qualifiers are not suitable for the new dynamic.
And what's more, black swan events happen, which you cannot predict, regardless of how long you've been working with people.
Yeah.
The point that I'm making, though, is not don't qualify. I think we've established that, right?
Yeah.
The point is there is a level that literally mires progress of any kind in pedantic loophole questioning, where things just cul-de-sac. And that's been a historical experience for multiple marginalized groups because the status quo
You
thrives
lost
in
me.
bureaucracy.
Once you said marginalized groups, you lost
Oh,
me.
package it however you like.
Yeah, but
Certain
you're not on my
demographics-
boat anymore because you're doing the thing. That is my point.
I'm pointing out a different thing and saying this is still valid. It does not negate your point, and these truths, two separate truths, can coexist and do interact.
I agree with that. Two things can be true at the same time. A
Yes.
person can be both tall and short at the same exact time. That is true.
Right.
Right. But I cannot look at you and say you are without a shadow of a doubt short.
I mean,
Until I can't. Right now, I can't.
well,
I need
yeah,
a follow-up question.
sure.
Right? I have to say, well, how tall are you? And then whatever you say, I can't believe. I can accept, but I can't believe because perception is that your brain is also flawed because the human perception doesn't work the same way in everybody's brain.
May
So then I have to
confirm
make sure you understand height
the same way. Yeah.
the same way. Right? And that's all I'm saying is when we look at the world as a society and we see a black person and then we make our decisions because all it is a fucking dark colored person, we are wrong that we are wrong because we are not asking a follow-up question. We are denying everybody else our attention in that one instance solely based on a flawed biased perception. Because we are accepting dark colored skin means
X, Y, or Z, whether it's positive or negative, and whatever assumptions.
we are, and that to make a choice without a follow-up question is why we will never move forward.
I will confound you this way. Look, take this prior scenario. You know how tall I am. We've stood in the same presence with each other. Now,
Yes.
if you ask me, how tall are you? You could mean, have you grown any since I've seen you last? There's that. But at the same time, if I tell you, Thomas, I'm the same height I've been, and you go, I don't know whether that's tall or short. You know what I mean, and I know what you mean, and we're just going around in circles.
I disagree with this example because I already have the qualifier that you are short.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you are not tall as well because there are children, there are babies, there are dogs, but my point is I have already done the work to qualify my perception.
Sure.
In this scenario, if I didn't know you,
right,
and I said how tall you were,
that's horse of a different color.
Yeah, I would still need qualifiers. So it doesn't. But if I see a black person and I have known them for 50 fucking years,
right,
I don't need qualifiers at that point.
Sure.
So if I go, oh, we have resources to help Sarah, I think we should help Sarah. I already have the qualifiers. However, I still think I would be wrong because I haven't qualified everyone else.
Right. In what context is this aid being rendered? And what fund is being drained? What scenarios? And I agree with qualifiers. And I think where we don't disagree, but the point of contention is, what is the level of reasonable doubt? What is the level of conditional?
I like the first part. Cunt. It's just, again, this is why I think when we go, well, historically speaking, systemic racism, and you're like, I understand that exists. I'm not stupid to that.
Sure.
And I'm not diluting the fact that there is indeed, without a question of doubt, racism.
Sure.
But it is racist to look at a black person and assume without a qualifier, they're underprivileged.
Agreed.
And we should help them and give them reparations, and then we should
which is
whatever the ridiculousness is that they choose.
Which is why we have to engage with power blocks as they assemble and go, okay, you as a community have come together by merit of assembly and given the free space to do so by your labels and qualifiers that you self-identify with, and go,
again, we need to qualify because we can't believe them.
Sure. We can believe them, but we have to examine.
We can accept what they say, which is I can accept you saying you're tall, but I still need to qualify that you are tall.
It has to be examined. It has to be weighed.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
The problem is so much is stymied by a pedantic and bureaucratic process of doing so. And that's what I'm asserting.
Yeah,
Which is
but
not to say don't skepticize, don't question, don't analyze.
you should
Do all
always.
those things within a reasonable standard, not within an
So
unreasonable.
what's reasonable now?
That is the person who determines that is who holds the keys to power in this country.
That's what I'm saying. Because again, if we go back to, well, slavery has influenced us. Slavery definitely influenced me and my family. And you
Right.
think, well, how? And there's no fucking thing you can say that is going to say
Dude.
that that didn't happen, because
Dude,
I'm in America.
Dude, slavery influenced my family because
Of
where did
course.
Britain go for its discount cotton during the Civil War? The South. Where did they go when they decided they did not want to deal with the Confederates anymore? High.
Yeah. And good on them, you know? No, but my point is, we have all been displaced because of terrible things. So when do we say, like, what is the cutoff? You know what I'm saying? Because it's ridiculous. Because we've talked about this personally. Like, I fucking hate. I mean, hate with a hard H when someone tells me not only that I'm white, okay,
Mhm.
but that I'm everything that's associated with white. And then I go, but I'm Mediterranean. But what does that even mean? And my argument is that I'm African, because that's where Pangea the was connected to, and it's not even called Africa at the time. And the
But
human
you're being
race.
absurdist when you do that.
I'm not being absurdist, because it is objectively true
But
that we come from fucking Africa.
I'm not disputing that, but you
So
literally
they're
just said, how far
Africans.
back do we go? Right.
No, but how far back do we go?
Right.
Who determines that? I had someone once tell me that my heritage only goes back 2 generations. So I said, well, then I'm Native American. And he says, that doesn't make any sense. And I go, why not? And because you're not Native American. I go, I'm native to America. Not America as in the States, but literally the Americas.
Right.
I know you're smiling and laughing at this, but I
am
right. Objectively, I am right.
I'm intaking what you're what you're putting down and letting it marinate.
But my point is, I hate it because what was Italy anyway? Let's say we go all the way back to Sicily.
Sure.
It wasn't Sicily. It wasn't Italy. Rome didn't exist. That unless Rome existed all times, there had to have been a point where
there
Rome
was a
didn't
pre-Roman
exist.
state or a pre-Roman.
It was a pre-Italian, pre-Italy.
Well, yeah, of course.
There's
if it's pre-Roman,
then someone go, "Are you going to Flum Flum?" Because they didn't speak English or Italian or Latin or Greek or whatever.
Right.
There was no language other than right.
Right.
You know, and they do far right. So who am I? Am I Mongolian? Am I Greek? Am I Italian? Am I what? Am I this? Am I German? Because technically Mussolini did connect with right. So
I think when you have a family history that's qualified in living history and the experiences and suffering therein, or the institutions built by that suffering, I think that's the qualifier.
That's called culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't take away the fact that I am African.
Sure. Again, culture.
So why can't I?
Culture and race exist in a superposition for most of these demographics, right? So like that's a thing.
Well, yeah, because you could literally be French but be black and not from Africa.
That's
what's hilarious. All people from Africa, but all people are from Africa.
What's hilarious about that is because of writings of like people like Fanon, where there is literally an eradication of the ethnocentric identity in favor of a French nationalist identity. And that's why they got super upset when some French Olympians won awards, not recently, but this is like few Olympic celebrations back. They got furious about that because they got identified as black. It's like, no, they are French. And it's like,
they are
you
French.
guys, these two things can be true, and acknowledging their blackness does not take away from their Frenchness unless you say it does, which is kind of fucked up.
Well, all people are African.
Sure.
Our culture is what makes us something else.
Right.
But I am not Italian by culture.
Right.
I am Native American by culture.
And I'll put it this way. I'm Indian-ish by culture. There's a lot of my culture from
You're
my
American Indian by culture because you are influenced by the
Indian
Americas.
American, Indian American, lest to get confused with the other Indian demographic that's
No,
not
because that would be quote unquote Native American
right.
or indigenous,
But
right?
enough
But
people
you are indigenous
technically, yes.
to the Americas. So you are a Native American.
I'm uncomfortable biting their demographic. I have enough titles for my own culture that I don't need to
That's
bogart
the point of
theirs.
the conversation is that it's ridiculous.
I mean, is it?
It is to imagine, for example, Savan. I
Sure.
looked at you, and to me, all you were was Indian American.
Okay, so the vast majority of the people who interact with me.
And you hate it, right?
It's cloying.
Yeah, but you just said, hey, you got to switch that over. It's important to my identity.
No, it's important to me that I don't step on someone else's identity because my rights end where someone else's begin and vice versa.
All right. There's a lot to unpack there, but you are not, in my mind, a quote unquote Indian American. You are Savan that has culture and that has these things, and all this history is part of who you are.
Sure, and I appreciate that you acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if someone came up to me and said, "Can you categorize your friends into racial groups?" I have to say no.
Right.
Because I can't, because we are all African.
Sure, that's one way to take on that. I don't disagree with that.
Because we are all one people.
Right.
But culturally, it's a beautiful thing to do the things that represent your culture. But to say that culture is who you are would be a disservice, not only to you, but everyone else that is quote unquote Indian American.
Absolutely. Like I get into this with one of my best friends all the time where and not in like a contentious way, but in speaking to the very point you're pointing at, where he goes, listen, dude, I fucking like, I get, this is me quoting him. He goes, I get more pissed about this shit than you do, man, when people boil you down to that. Because I was like, have you talked to the man? Just talk to the man for 5 goddamn minutes. Get him going on Castlevania or 90s video games or JRPGs or animated series or whatever else is his passion. Anything in the world besides that, not because that isn't a part of him, but because that is not the most interesting part of him.
Wait, you're telling me your Indian Americanness is not the most interesting part about you? Then why do I have to categorize you? Why is it on a piece of paper? Why do you have to mark it down?
Because it's not a part of me either.
Yeah, but it is not important enough to be on a piece of paper. I don't think it is relevant to that piece of paper. But it is relevant to your. It's relevant. No, as a categorizer, it is not relevant. If it influences the perception of you, it is not relevant. It is only relevant to your experience and existence because it is something you grew up with, you experience. But the moment you have to mark it down to represent you, it is not about you. It is for someone else, right? So
I will contend that, let's put it this way, if it's part of me engaging with that community, then that's relevant. And that's for more than just me, you know? And I think that has value.
All right. But think about how insane it is to meet somebody, shake their hand, and they are Indian American. And you go, hi, I am an Indian American named Savan.
Well, we don't have to say that because we know.
But you don't know.
Or at least there are tells. Let's just put it that way. There are tells.
But you still don't know until you do a follow-up question, which would be maybe the tells.
I mean, I had a friend in the convention scene who was a con chair, and she herself is part Indian American. And she asked me, are you Indian? And now there's reason she asked me because she was also partially blind at the time. And that's a fair cop. That's an absolutely fair question under the circumstances, you know?
It's always a fair question.
And I didn't mind at all. I was like, yes, I am. And it's like, okay, cool.
But when do you mind?
I mean, tone is a big thing. How someone asks.
So tone.
Tonally, if somebody goes, are you Indian American or are you fucking Indian or something like that and like sneers at me, then that's not something I'm going to be comfortable with. What
if they have autism and they don't understand social cues and they learn to
Sure.
speak with that aggression.
There's speaking with aggression.
Indian American, right?
Well, that's just your cartoonish delivery of that notwithstanding. Like, there's somebody not having social cues, and then there's for certain facial expressions do convey bigotry. Like when somebody is staring you with full on hate, that is
you're Indian American.
Yeah, that's not the one. So when somebody is looking down their nose at you with disdain, and you can literally see it marked all over the face, that is a different story.
But you're shorter than most people, so aren't they always looking down their nose at you?
Sure, but with the disdain.
Oh, with the disdain.
The disdain and hatred is the critical flavor there.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, to have to inform or recognize that somebody is, like, if I see another Sicilian, for me to be like, oh, a Sicilian, I feel at home. Like, that's fucking crazy to me.
Well, and to a certain extent, these things get a little goofy because, like, let's put it this way. I have never felt more alone than when in a throng of non-disparate Indians. Like, I don't know these people. They're not my people in the sense of I don't connect with them unless I know them. You know, if it's family, that's one thing. But like, if it's like I'm at Mumbai International Airport, I do not feel kinship here. You're
not like
Indian American.
My people.
There's no the prodigal son has come home. No, that's not.
They're like, get out of my way. You know?
Right? Exactly. So it's important, but it's in this weird superposition of it's important until it isn't, and it isn't important until it is. You know?
Yeah. No, I think that's what I'm saying, because for you, it's important as a part of your experience, your growth.
If I can speak to this as well, like specifically and I swore to myself I wouldn't do this, and it has nothing to do with the podcast itself, but like in general, it was just 9/11, right?
When? Oh, you're saying the holiday.
Yeah, the annual Haterade Day. Yes. So the point is, and I almost was able to forget this year. Like I almost cruised by without having to remember, because, you know, never forget has different connotations for people who suffer the purge annually because of it. So with that, after 9/11, it was not a fun time to be my demographic. Now, before that, it's not that I didn't experience racism, because I certainly did. I had cops lasering me with firearms in violation of firearm protocol, and all kinds of other shit happened. But it was dialed up. And the African-American community, or the Black community, or however the fuck you want to call it, depending on who you are, took me in like a major way.
Took a lot of pressure off of them.
That's one way to put it. Another is that they understood. And so the thing is, there are Indian American communities that exist that do their thing and really, you know, insulate their youth and involve them in the culture. But for most of us first generations, especially Gen X, we didn't have that. Both our parents worked, you know, like that was the thing. And so like for us, being amongst our own kind has less connotations. For Indian Americans, my generation, this is a generalization that I'm sure some people have different lived experiences with, but that wasn't a thing for us as much. And then if you look at the Black community, if you look at other communities of my generation, of later generations, of earlier generations, they have a certain cultural continuity that exists, persists, and suffuses. And that's what I think is where those distinctions are really important, more so than mine, because it's so much more of the lived experience is what I'm getting at. And that's a additive, that's a generative, that's not a taking away from anyone or a value judgment thing. It's literally just about who they are as a culture and a person.
I mean, that statement is accurate, but it is the reason people are terrible, because we look at that culture and say XYZ. We look at the Hasidic Jew community in Crown Heights and go blah 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 blah. We say stupid. We say whatever we say, right?
Right.
And in reality, it's probably more important to them that they recognize that they are Hasidic Jews because of their way of life and that it is an isolated community, right? Have you ever been to Crown Heights?
Yes.
All right. So,
and also I've been a part of the Jewish American community, not as myself a member at all, but like I've been adjacent to the Jewish American community enough.
That's fair. My brother's a rabbi, so it works out. And
I've
also,
dated enough Jewish ladies. It's proximity. It's not the same as being a part of it, but like, you know.
yeah. But yeah, no, a lot of times they think I'm Jewish as well. They pull me in. They go, "What's your Hebrew name?" I go, "Thomas," you know, but which is true. But to them, it's their life, it's their culture. But for us, when we identify them as Hasidic Jews, it's not important, right? Because we are categorizing them. We are not, you know what I'm saying?
I really appreciate you taking the time to qualify this with me, not because I was uncertain about you in any way like that, but like just I'm enjoying this conversation. I hope you are too, you know?
Yeah. No, the whole thing. I've enjoyed the whole conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm never going to talk to you again, but no.
Is there a quota? You're like, I'm full up. I'm good.
What is it about the qualifier that incited such an emotional reaction?
Which qualifier? I mean, help me out.
Because I just said the thing about Hasidic Jews and my perspective on like how it's important
Nothing
to them.
About
like,
that. That's just more a general reaction to nothing
right,
about that specific subject matter.
What is it about the general? Like, what are you saying?
I'm appreciating how we're coming to the value, not value judgment, but the worth, shall we say, of these labels for all that they can be problematic, for all that there is an in-group situation versus an out-group situation of these cultures, sub-demographics, so on. But I think it is really important to acknowledge, and I think that that's part of the American strength that has been lost in the discourse, is that our differences are our strength. Our disparity of perspective are our strength, that we can challenge each other, that we can disagree with each other, that we can enjoy different things. Because, I mean, and let's be clear, I agree with you on a lot more than you think, I think. But for instance, whiteness is a construct. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it is a construct. It is literally a mass-produced label that was created by the in-group to homogenize American society and then exacerbated further when we imported actual Nazis to train us in how to indoctrinate our culture, amongst other things. Build our rockets, build our amusement parks, help us indoctrinate our culture.
You leave Albert Einstein alone. All right.
It's more Werner von Braun that I'm thinking of, but sure. Like, and it's Project Paperclip should be required reading in American history classes, but it's not. And there's reasons for that.
Yeah. And I agree wholeheartedly with the melting pot thing, which is, by the way, my worldview.
Right.
Is like, that's why I think America as an idea is beautiful in the fact that, like, if you're in New York City,
oh my God,
everyone's culture's there. We're getting to enjoy other people's foods, other people.
Yep.
I love walking through and hearing different languages. I love seeing different, styles of dress. I love seeing different, just representation. However, obviously, in Lord of the Rings of Power, you wouldn't see that in the Hobbits, because. But anyway, that's another story.
Don't get me started on that noise.
We'll be here for another 8 hours. But if the world could be New York, and I'm using that very loosely, obviously, because there's some issues with New York. But if the world could be New York, the things that would help us develop as a people, I think, because that's the other thing. Like, I obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, but cultural appropriation to me is bad in the negative sense.
Right.
But cultural appreciation is really how we should be. Like, if somebody dresses up in a certain way, I don't think they should be attacked for it until there's a follow-up question.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
I'll put it this way. This is where I'm going to seem to flip, and you're going to be more liberal seeming than I am. Ready for this?
Yeah.
God, I fucking hate the words cultural appropriation, because much like DEI and so many other things, it's become a sham. It's become a performative fucking banner where a lot of white liberals get to assuage their guilt and go through their catharsis. Where
leave Karen alone.
No, I won't, because she won't leave me alone as she orders her pumpkin spice latte, I mean Indian cinnamon latte, in her Ugg boots.
My characters made me do it. Okay.
So, first of all, the vast majority of export businesses of cultural garb are not white owned. So you're already hurting minority businesses as these people are just trying to make a buck, right? Or
you're talking about the people who are like, you shouldn't wear other people's clothes. Those people are hurt. Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yes, 100%.
And like the one place where I like look, if it's spiritual or if it's an aspect of Black culture, like specifically, like I'm not saying white people can't wear dreads, but I'm saying
no.
When you start putting blackface on for cosplay, I'm like, okay.
That yes, but I can wear dreads. I could study. I could worship voodoo. I can do hoodoo.
If it's a closed practice, be prepared to ask some follow-up questions. Certain cultures,
okay,
certain cultures do not let people in. Where it's like, oh, I am practicing this.
You know how hard it is to convert to Judaism? I know,
dude. I'll put it this way: Zoroastrianism, they don't want you. They don't.
Yeah, but again, if they don't want you, you can still believe those things. You just can't associate with those people.
Exactly.
But the point is,
and you have no right telling them what their gathas mean, is what I would say. Like, don't start speaking their scripture to them like you know what you're talking about, because
unless you do know.
But the thing is, when you take these things out of the context of their culture, this becomes very big with white Hindus that aren't Hindus but are having an Indian summer, shall we say? Like,
okay, well, who are Catholics then?
People who are part of the Catholic Church. But again, this isn't.
You better be Roman.
First of all, these are different things, and these do not map the same way. So,
but I don't know. The culture is Roman.
But to convey the point that I'm getting at is the one place where I get hot under the collar about cultural appropriation is when it intersects spirituality. And I'm like, all right, come the fuck on. Like, if you are like, I went to an SCA event, and I don't want to paint the SCA this way, and I don't want to paint the event this way, but at said event, at a party, one woman could not wait to tell me how much she wanted a Kali lawn ornament to terrorize kids with. And I'm like, first of all, tacky. Second of all, no, this isn't the cliche hot button that all of you wonderful performative Beckys can't just help but hat dance upon that nerve. Yeah, just go straight for the Temple of Doom of it all, please. Thank you. Like, that's just two white directors working through their divorces becomes a caricature of my culture. So, like, without getting into my rant about that, that's my point when it comes to there is a tipping point with cultural appropriation where it's like, no, that person deserves a sock in the face. But before that, it becomes just this performative bandwagon that's just more ridiculous than anything else, you know?
Wouldn't you say, though, that everything is on the table except if it affects the two rules, which is one, you're hurting people physically, or you're going out of your way to fuck with people? Blackface is going out of your way to fuck with people, but wearing dreads is not.
Sure. Trying to practice Hinduism and doing a slipshod job of it is going out of your way. Given the amount of literature given the amount of literature we've published, it is going out of your way.
I think you need a follow-up question, because they might not have the guidance, and they might be asking for the guidance. They might be getting false guidance.
And that unfortunately puts the burden of being cultural ambassador once again on the people in question.
No, it doesn't. It's on the people who they ask.
No,
it doesn't. Because what if who they're asking is a community that isn't necessarily of your culture?
Sure.
But they are Hindus.
Right. And that does exist. Because Hinduism is bigger than India. It's certainly like the version of Hinduism I practice is not the one my parents raised me with. So there's that. Like, that's the whole thing. So,
but all right. So with that, if somebody asks you to teach them Hinduism and you teach them your way, but then
I will always qualify that, first of all, with Hinduism as a construct. What you mean is more so because Hinduism is not one religion. Hinduism is 5 different massive buckets of religions loosely coexisting under an Adobe Creative Suite. That is the word Hinduism.
I mean, but again, it's all made up.
I mean, unless it isn't. So,
no,
far be it from me.
Let's say God is real.
Right.
The perception of how we have perceived God is all made up.
Listen,
because we had to come up with words that were all made up.
That is the crux of my flavor of Hinduism, both multiple flavors of Hinduism, because we literally believe that the multiple where the word incarnation and avatar comes from is literally he has to keep coming down to correct you dumb monkeys because you got it wrong.
Well, what's that joke where they say Jesus Christ, he's on his fourth coming, but you keep throwing him in the mental institute? Because he's like, I'm Jesus Christ. And they're like, boom.
Well, this is where it cuts away to like a Family Guy joke where it has like Jesus on heaven turning to Vishnu going, I'm so sorry, Vishnu. It's okay. You always do this to me, man.
That's funny.
So yeah, that's my take on cultural appropriation. It's ridiculous until it isn't, and when it isn't, it's almost borderline cause for violence. But before that, it's just stupid. and the thing is, when it qualifies for scorn, cultural appropriation is entirely too sanitized a term. It's too neat. It's too clean. Call it colonization because that's what the fuck it is.
I fucking hate that word. Because I'm pale. Everyone's like, you're a colonizer, and I'm like, I am not.
No,
I don't. I mean, I come from a people
I'm sorry
that
that
are
you catch
because
the flack.
Romans.
I'm sorry that you catch the flack for that, but that's unfortunately that's a very that's a very necessary word, unfortunately, in these discourses. Better than appropriation. What pompous ass.
But colonization is wrong. So the solution is to not colonize. But I also agree on colonization. And that's crazy, right? Because war. Who owns what land? No one.
Sure, until people start pushing people out from said land. And then it's like, okay.
They lost.
Yes.
Yeah, they lost.
That's a fucked idea.
See you later. Bye. No, because Rome only exists because it exists for a reason, if you know what I mean. You know, it got taken over. I wouldn't be here without Mongolia. I wouldn't be here without the Roman army. I wouldn't be here without the Greek army. I wouldn't be here without the Vikings. I wouldn't be here, right? That everything led to you and me even being born.
Oh, sure. Like, let's put this way. My parents would not have met were not for Western imperialism. Because there would have been no America to get a student visa to. Like,
do I have empathy for the people that experience that? Yes. I don't believe in war. I hate when people are hurt. I hate when people are displaced. I hate, all that is true. But it exists in the sense of that's the only reason we do exist is because even the tribes, before we could speak words during Pangea and the Ice Age, they fought and colonized areas,
I think the nuance of the term, or I should say the distinction, not the nuance of the term, is a certain level of exploitation that's very specific, not just standard war and conquest,
But it is, well, like some people might say war and conquest is different than colonization, but they did settle. You know what I'm saying? Like they took over. I think
we're just having fun with words now.
You know what I'm saying? They were like, hey, this looks good over here. We just killed, the Gores, hey, we're going to kill a third of you.
Yeah, it's worse. They stayed. They didn't leave.
I know. They were like, well, yeah, but Rome, to be fair, Rome was like, you can continue to believe in your false gods, but that was nice.
No, they patched them into their religion with long enough
time. The Romans did. Yeah, but they did. Because they wanted to collect. But as in the beginning, though, it wasn't like that. Right. You got to remember the empire was much bigger.
Sure.
But going back, and then I think we could call it a day because it's almost 3 hours. I want to go back to what?
Sorry if we ran over.
No. I look. Normally it's 30 minutes, but when the conversation goes to somewhere that's interesting, if you're still listening, this started from fries.
Right? Yeah, we started with French fries. Make of that what you will.
That's right. 30% was colonized, and we were like, no.
No, that's a preventative measure. 30% is your demarcation line.
Yeah. That's when we were like, I think we're being colonized. We should stop this.
How about you get your own fries? I'll pay for your own fries.
Yeah. How about you just keep South Africa? All right. So,
fuck. You were gonna get me. You can get me in trouble here.
So funny though. So back, I just want to kind of touch on the thing real quick where you were saying, like when people, and I'm just going to use Hindu because you said Hindu, but religion in the sense, that's when you have an issue with, and I also agree with you on cultural appropriation being a terrible.
It's a stupid term.
It's a sell word.
It's just dumb.
It's marketing. It's marketing 101. I will stand by that all cultures are on the table to assimilate, because that's how we got the culture that we have. And an example of that is, modernly speaking, I am with a Puerto Rican Dominican who grew up in the Bronx and Staten Island, New York. And her heritage and her upbringing in the Puerto Rican and Dominican split created the American, New York, Puerto Rican, Dominican culture. Right. And it's a different culture. I grew up in a very Sicilian household, but I did not grow up Sicilian. I grew up like in baseball and like in this and, all these. So without the ability to assimilate different cultures, we would not create the people we are today. Like I wouldn't exist.
Sure. I will offer this. There are some things that are not for us. And I think that that's my prior statement about my rights end where someone else's begin and vice versa.
Yeah.
There are some things that are not for us. And accepting that is a part of graceful navigation of the melting pot of cultures. There are some things that are just not for you.
Yeah, that's where we disagree. But
sure,
it's okay to because again, I don't believe in separation of humanity. Right?
Sure.
But I do agree in being aware of things. But here's an example of like something that would irk me and is a thing that happened. There was this white woman who was dressed in the Japanese traditional garb, and people attacked her and said she should lose a job and all this stuff. And it turns out she married a Japanese man.
Oh yeah,
who's high up in that culture, and
that's
because she's a part of that. I was friends with a man, Kunal. I won't say his last name though, and his parents didn't like when his daughter would date anyone that was not from Mumbai.
So that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole right. But my point is that guy was trying to understand the culture, to connect not only with the daughter but the family.
Sure.
And they said it was racist, and but it wasn't like they were like wearing the outfit and be like, "Look, I'm in the," like that wasn't what they were doing. They were
she into it because
she loved him.
Okay, well then that's a whole other thing.
That's all right, but
we're not talking. And the problem is, and this is a thing as well, a lot of immigrant families, especially the parents, will get this level of xenophobia because they feel that their culture is beset by American culture, and will get this level of I'm under siege and I have to preserve my culture's values. And there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
And then there's taking it too far. And I would argue that that is probably taking it too far. But then who am I to say how old was their daughter at the time? And all of these are why follow-up questions are important, right? Because like if she was 16, I'd be like, maybe you leave it
still
alone.
Molding her. Yeah. No,
so I'll give you another scenario. There was that tribe in a Southeast Asian island that then some lunatic missionary showed up for. This was before the pandemic, but that tribe was isolated, did not have vaccines, did not have modern antibodies. They killed that missionary after he was warned multiple times to get the fuck off the island, that he did not belong there. He had to go to extreme lengths to bring his God to these savages, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. Which they did not ask him to show up. They don't want him there. And after refusing to leave multiple times, they killed him.
Yes. And they were in their right because he broke one, if not both, the rules.
And what's more, even in his death, he exposed them to disease and infected them.
Yes.
And so now, on the one hand, that is separation of humanity by their choice, by their lifestyle.
No, they did everything. Nothing they did was wrong.
Their society is a separation from the rest of humanity, is what I'm saying.
They can choose that.
Yeah, okay, so that's
okay.
an important line to parse.
That is okay because they are choosing that. But that guy had the right to also go there. But because they didn't listen and they chose to do the two things, A, kill people with sickness, and B, fuck with them, he got killed.
Arguably, him bringing his modern infested ass.
He has the right to do that.
I would argue he doesn't, considering that his very presence.
We didn't know he was
did.
sick. Oh, all right. Well, wait. If he knew he had the plague with him,
it wasn't that he was infested with something like he didn't have COVID or anything like that. It's that he literally carries modern diseases, and it is known that this island has been isolated for so long. They do not have modern antibodies. Going there, just the act of going there is innately fucking with them.
Well, I think the guy is wrong for going there knowing he was going to kill people.
Right. It was more important to peddle his
he broke the two rules, Savan.
Right.
Yeah, no, he purposefully went there to fuck with them, and he killed people.
Yep.
Knowing it. Now, if he didn't know,
right,
that he had, or even like Columbus had no idea how to transfer sickness. He has the right to go to the Americas. 100%. He has the right.
There are a lot of myths about Columbus and his intentions.
Let's assume whatever the fucking story is, it is, all right? Just for the example.
Sure, for the example. Fine.
All right, Verrazano had the right to build the bridge.
I love your pivot. Your pivot was fantastic there. Okay. Go on.
Verrazano, my Italian brother, Columbus technically was Italian. He has the right to go there, right? And he has the right to do anything he wants there. Everybody has the right to do it except breaking those two rules. As soon as you break those two rules, you're in the wrong. Now, for society to grow like it was, some people had to break these two rules.
Sure. We'd have a very different society or societies today.
Yeah, we wouldn't be who we are. We wouldn't exist. There's no way we would exist.
Right.
Because my grandparents
exactly
wouldn't have Mussolini wouldn't have been a thing, you know.
But butterfly effects all the way down, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, saying that the people came out like the group, whatever, the 13 colonies, whatever, like they were wrong. They weren't wrong. They were in their right because they're human. If they lost the land, the other people would have been right.
I would argue that they were wrong after leaving for all the right reasons, not wanting to be persecuted, that sort of thing, of course,
Yep.
And then turning around and doing the exact same persecution upon others, which again is going to go back to your two rules, but there it is, right?
Yeah, they broke the two rules. But what I'm saying is the people lost the battle.
I don't think that conveys a moral victory. That it's just.
I'm not saying it does,
okay.
But they did lose the battle.
Yeah, that's facts are facts,
right?
100%. Yeah,
but I also agree that if they did fight back and they won and got rid of the colonies, the war part would be wrong. Right? But I would accept that the colonies lost.
Right.
Because that's my point in that kind of like that institute, because like when Mongolia, they won.
Right.
They were wrong, but it's Mongolia now.
Right, exactly. It's
right. But then eventually Mongolia became this tiny little dot on the map. And the reason is because people were like, maybe we should get together because this Genghis Khan guy and his kids and
also a bunch of them settled down. We're like, hey, we now run China, so we're here now. This is, and maybe we don't want to do the whole raiding thing anymore. Like maybe we just chill.
Dad died, so maybe we could just like play ping pong or something.
Right. There's this wall that was supposed to keep us out. Now we're on top of it. So hey, these are looking good.
So yeah, like. But going back to the culture thing and the religion, like again, I don't think anything is off the table as long as you don't break those two rules. Because if I wanted to become a Hindu and someone told me I couldn't, I would think they were crazy because I want to connect to God. And if your religion is right and God is real,
well, one of the things that I, as a practicing Hindu, would tell you is, first of all, we don't assume we're right over anyone else. Like we think we're right. but we don't
Right,
go and
you're right.
say that person's wrong and that person's wrong. That no Hindu scripture does that. Modern interpretists and especially perversions of the religion have done that. But one thing that's kind of cool about our scriptures is we don't go and go, that person's fucked up, and anyone who doesn't believe in this is fucked up. Don't worship them, worship us. They just say, hey, we are pro these gods. This is what we're about. Welcome to the party. That's it.
So if I came to you and was like, I want that. I see the
Well,
philosophy, I see the love.
Most Hinduisms, if you will, most Hindu faiths, because there are many, are open practices. And that's what that means. So they'd invite you in. Again, the Hare Krishnas got that bit from us, from our temples. There's Hindu temples now that you can go to, and they will feed you and teach you and whatnot. And yeah, come on in, eat the food. What do you got?
How spicy is the food? I heard stories.
Again, depends on the temple, but some will make it. Some have even gone as far as to make for American palates as well. So like that's a whole thing.
Are you saying American palates or what does American palate mean? That's the question.
Not ready to have the Vindaloo.
Well, because like a fifth generation Indian,
not ready to have the Vindaloo unless their family is really authentic with the cuisine.
Could I have more bread, please?
So
yeah. All right. So to qualify, to just kind of bring everything to a conclusion,
wrap it up with a bow.
You're happy to feed people, but they can't take more than 3 fries from your 10 fry plate. 30%. But you're more than happy to buy them.
Yeah, exactly.
30%. Okay.
Nobody goes hungry. Just leave me mine.
I'm willing to feed anyone and anyone. I don't, as long as they at least kindly say, "Are you going to eat that for the last one?"
Right.
Okay. As far as solving the world issues, I believe the world should come together and work as one to solve the major issues while also fighting the smaller issues. And you agree with that.
Yes.
But your stance also puts a little bit more energy on the what would you call it? The discriminated, the minority groups,
the marginalized.
The marginalized. Yeah. So we disagree on that. I think all people are equal, but you think marginalized people take precedence.
I think that there's an urgency, not that we were less or more equal. I think that people are equal. But
all people technically have an urgency because cancer can affect anybody. It's not race based.
Sure. Again,
right?
That's one
sort of, but fire, clean water, all these things, everybody needs it, right?
Sure.
Oh, okay. All right. Just making sure. I just wanted to clarify. I didn't know burning houses down and putting them out change speed based on your nationality.
They don't. They do based on the infrastructure of your neighborhood.
All right, but that has nothing to do with them being black. It has to do with we have to learn how to organize the infrastructure and make it a little bit more accessible to all people equally.
Yes.
Which has nothing to do with them being black.
It has a little to do with them being black.
So you're saying black people are incapable
of being... I said it depends on the neighborhood.
Because they are black, we have to pay attention to them.
I said it depends on the neighborhood. And to ascertain further what I mean would require follow-up questions for your own process.
All right. What about white communities that are in need? Should they...
They also, if they, by definition, they're in need, right?
Yeah, but like they're worse than Detroit. Should we help Detroit or should we help the white community?
Well, Detroit has helped itself, as you would advocate. They do a great deal, in fact, by focusing on their individual problems and then creating macro solutions from their micro solutions. Yeah, I'm really glad you chose Detroit as an example.
They also hate gentrification.
Yes.
Which makes them a horrible place to go. Because they believe in isolation and isolism and they're racist. So that's what happens.
I'm uncomfortable with the generalization of the entirety of Detroit this way, but again, that's not my particular hill.
Yeah, but if I say, hey, I don't want anybody coming here that's not us,
that has value. It's wrong, but that has relatable value because if people sweep in and they don't have the cultural values of the locals and they sweep in and take over the locals, thus disenfranchising them, that's a thing.
So now people from Detroit aren't allowed to move to any other state.
No one said that. You're saying that. I'm saying it has value, not that it is the be-all, end-all of the discussion.
Can people move to Detroit?
People can move to Detroit.
Even
people
if
can
they
move
don't
to-
have the same culture
Yes.
as Detroit people?
And Detroit locals get to feel some kind of way about that.
So if people from Detroit move to another state, those people get to have some kind of
Yes.
way. And
Everybody
does
gets
that mean
to
they
feel
get
the
to
way
stay?
want
They have to get out of there?
No, because their rights end when somebody else's begin, and vice versa. Everyone has freedom of movement. If they can do it, they can do it. But that doesn't mean the locals don't get a right to feel some kind of way about it.
All right. So to clarify, marginal people aren't just non-white people.
No, that covers a spectrum of different things, from disability to gender to all of that. Yeah.
I'll accept that then.
Yeah.
But I would also include all people, as in the world, not Michigan.
There are marginalized people everywhere, yes.
Yeah. But for argument's sake, you're not saying just America needs the help.
No, God, no.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All right.
And then what were the other two other things? You're okay with assimilation of culture as long as it's not taking advantage of certain liberties, right? Like
if it's not invasive, unclosed practices, if it's not colonization, soft or otherwise, then it's fine. If you're respectful, cool. If you're appropriative, if you're colonizing, if you are basically slapjacking things that aren't meant for you and aren't meant for public consumption, then that's not cool.
We disagree on that because I believe there is nothing that isn't off the table, because the only way we evolve as a society is by changing the way we perceive things.
Sure.
And that is the only reason religions exist.
I think that that's wild. There's a lot of reasons religions exist, and they're not all the same.
Yes, are you saying that evolution did not create religion?
I'm not
evolution of like we went from fish
anthropology. Yeah. Yes, religions have evolved.
That's what I mean.
What I'm saying though is we should respect closed practices and closed cultures. If somebody does not want you in their house, don't be in their house. Choose a different house. Got all these flavors, and
that's
you choose to go where
believe that. But those people are wrong because they are doing this. They are affecting one of the two rules.
Again, those two rules they're not going out of their way to be a dick to anyone.
They are saying you can't.
They're saying don't come into my space.
Yeah, but if
I go in my area,
if I say I want to be a Muslim,
no one's going to stop you from being a Muslim if you go through the right channels. There are some cultures that you don't even know about. There are some cultures that I don't even know about because they have closed practices.
Yeah, but let's say it is closed, though. If I find out about it and I like the culture, I'm allowed to practice that culture.
You're allowed to find your way however you choose.
Yeah.
But if you show up in their spaces and start trying to misrepresent them, that's a problem. That's going out of your way to be a dick.
Well, that I agree with, but it's also them telling you you're not allowed to experience.
They're not going to go tell you you're not allowed to experience whatever you experience. What they will say is, don't represent my shit. You are not representative of my shit.
Yeah, which is telling you to stop.
No.
You said you don't.
I can say that
don't represent our shit.
I can say that the average soccer mom wearing her capri pants going to yoga classes is not representative of the Hindu practice of yoga. That is not me preventing them from doing their bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
But it is saying, don't misrepresent our shit. Call it something else. At this point, that would be futile, though.
Oh, you don't want them saying it's yoga.
To that specific point, I'm just using that example, but that specific point, it's useless at this point because that shit started back in the 50s. And there is no putting the genie back in the bottle with that.
But who cares?
Right. There's that element too. There was a time where it would have made sense to care. That was when it started 55 years.
Why does it matter is the real question.
Because it's become a literal trend and a cottage industry of someone's spiritual practice.
Not that part. Let's ignore the yoga element.
Sure.
Just the concept that yoga has turned into this thing, but
because
a thing that had to do with something
people not from that in-group went and found a way to make money with the spiritual practices of that in-group and then repackaged it.
Do
Which
you like
is
wine?
I enjoy wine, yes.
Did you do your research on the religious and cultural aspect of wine with the Sicilian and Roman Empire?
I did some. I won't call myself an expert by any means, but I did some research on that,
All
yes.
right, because if you're not drinking wine for the reason that we drink wine, you are technically doing the same thing yoga.
Listen, I enjoy many things that Americana has repackaged for me. Okay.
But what I'm saying is it
But
doesn't matter. Enjoy your wine.
Acknowledge where it came from. Don't be a plagiarist.
But it didn't come from anywhere.
We're going to disagree on that. When the very word is a religious term, we're going to disagree on that.
But even the religious word came from nowhere. It just, people decided one day that was the word. And enough people decided, and then the word changed and evolved.
Sure, but again, we are having two wildly different discussions now.
All I'm saying is the concept of things will and have to evolve to become the things they are.
Call it something else rather than plagiarizing a spiritual tradition.
But I would almost say that yoga was probably not what it was called when they first started.
Is what it was called because the term itself evolved. It started as the fusion of two practices. Any two practices is the term yoga. And then it came to mean the fusion of spirituality and calisthenics.
What was it called before they decided that the word yoga means this?
It wasn't. That's the thing is the word predates the craft. The craft evolved to encompass the term.
Maybe I'll ask it a different way. What was it called before yoga?
But that's just it. That's what's fucking you up. The term predates the practice. It wasn't called anything. The practice grew to envelop the term and became that.
The practice became yoga.
Yes.
So what was it called before yoga? What did they call that practice?
We're having a chicken and egg argument here. So
what? All right. For example,
the
egg is called egg. What do you think they called it before they called it an egg?
But the problem is the term itself predates the practice. The practice became the term. The practice wasn't called anything else before it was called yoga.
So you're saying it was always called yoga. They didn't come to terms and say, what does this word mean?
They had to rehash what this word means.
Correct.
To encompass the practice.
Other things that
literally doesn't predate the word is what I'm trying to tell you is the practice had no other title.
Yeah. Yoga came into existence because they had to explain something else.
Yes.
So that something else had a name.
No. You're talking about the etymology of the word yoga and the development of the practice. The practice had no other term.
Correct. It had no term.
And then it grew.
They just like they walked up to each other. They looked each other in the eye and then they started doing this thing.
This is a fusion of two different arts. So they called it yoga. And that
I'm trying to understand how crazy this is.
It's really
I love the study of words. So this is interesting. So two people walked to like a location, looked at each other.
Now, I'm not a yogi. This is
no, wait. No, can you just hear me out? Because what you're saying to me is interesting.
Sure.
Because it's almost mythical. Two people walked to a location, looked at each other in the eye, said no sounds, no words, gave no gesture, and then instantly just started the practice. Right? And that is how they decided to do the practice. No one at any time said, hey, do you want to... Maybe once they were like, hey, do you want to do that thing that makes our nuts stretch?
So I'm going to try this. There are component pieces of yoga that could be called. The word for stretching, the word for meditation. I don't know those. I don't know those offhand. My Hindi has slipped over the years.
So the Hindi word for meditation might have been the precursor to a portion of what yoga it turned into yoga.
Right. But the thing is, yoga is by definition the fusion of those things.
Correct.
Because the fusion of two different practices was the pre-existing literal definition of yoga. So at some point it was called two different things. And then somebody said, this is yoga in the literal sense.
Yes, somebody made it up.
No. Somebody said, because again,
It wasn't made up. It existed before they thought of
the
it.
term yoga predates the practice, is what I keep telling you.
I understand, but so it wasn't
it's
made
like
up.
saying fusion. Okay,
It
like
came
it's
down from Mount Sinai on two
no, it's
stone
just the
plates.
concept of fusion, the concept of blending two different practices was the literal meaning of yoga.
All right. So it wasn't made up. It just always existed.
Not always, but
So someone made it up.
yes, at some point before the practice, someone made up the term yoga.
So it's just made up.
Sure.
So, but whoever made it up still is alive today, and they own it.
No.
They trademarked it. I'm trying
See,
to
I know
understand.
you're baiting me at this point. So
I'm
like,
not trying to bait. I'm trying to. Your logic has it's illogic logic.
no, it
Yeah,
just
because
doesn't conform to
logically it
your
makes
logic.
sense to you, but illogically, it actually
Your
doesn't have
perception,
meaning.
in your perception, it doesn't make sense.
No, it
My
makes sense to me. I know what you're saying, but I'm thinking outside the box in the sense that it technically doesn't actually mean anything. It's made
I
up.
mean, sure, and if one believes in holographic theory, nothing matters. But the point is, these things matter. These terms matter. These cultural positions matter. If we throw things out, then we throw things out. And then why
Have you ever had a meatball palm hero or fish?
Sure.
Mm.
And you know what? I engage in a cultural exchange with people of that culture where I paid them dollars, which represent revenue, for that meatball farm.
But I can't do that if I want to practice yoga.
Oh, you can.
But it's insulting.
Because there's a Ponzi scheme that was started by a bunch of white people to appropriate my culture, and I'll use that term.
But you appropriated my culture by enjoying wine, fish, and heroes.
Sure. And
you don't think so?
How does that impact your spirituality?
Well, it doesn't mine, but my people, quote unquote, if I'm
how does that impact their spirituality?
Because that's the thing that brought them together to manja for the La Familia. It was the thing that, first of all, wine in itself was a societal thing.
Right.
It was right, just to bring people together. It has been cultural appropriated. I hate that word too.
Right.
To make money. It has been mass produced like yoga, basically taking away from the purpose of it to make money. And that started way before Rome.
I mean, let's put it this way. If you want me to get really silly about this, how do you add up that money?
I don't care about it though.
But I'm saying, flow with me on this. How do you add up that money?
What do you mean? Like, how do I figure out how much money has been spent on it?
Exactly.
You can't.
Now, I'm saying in general, not like give me the sum total that has been spent on wine as a concept. Like in a day-to-day sense. You use
probably math. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
I'm just saying you use math, right?
Yeah.
With those Arabic numerals.
You mean Greek?
You mean Indian? You mean Vedic? Because the Greeks were translating Vedic numerals. You're also welcome for 0, by the way.
Yes, but you were not the creator of math.
No, math exists objectively.
Because if we see two things, it has added up.
Yes.
We just didn't have words for this and this make 2.
Until you had those Arabic numerals.
But the Greeks created 0.
No, that was us too. 10,000 BC. Or at least 7,500 BC.
Where did the number 0 originate?
If you go to Wikipedia and its sources, there's plenty of literature.
I'm not going to. Where's Mesopotamia? Babylon.
We predate Mesopotamia and Babylon.
So this is your biased understanding through your cultural education, not necessarily.
No, there's literature on it. And I mean, like,
I get you. Yeah. Probably written by the same culture, right?
And ratified by Western thought, so not necessarily.
All right, yeah, whatever. Okay. So you guys created everything, just like
No,
just
certainly
like
not
people created the phone.
No.
I get it. I know Indians created everything.
No, just math.
No, you didn't create math. You created the numbers.
The numbers by which you use math. Yes, if we're
but you just said your people created math.
That was a misspoke. So,
That's right. So is it possible that you misspoke on
no,
the zero?
No, I meant zero. Zero especially. That's
Why?
actually
Zero was why zero?
because we calculated the speed of light better than Einstein down to
How better than Einstein?
if you literally translate the ancient Sanskrit, and then recently they have come up with a scientific value for the length of the human eye blink.
Okay,
And they took the
all right,
very
that makes
poetic
sense.
language in the Rig Veda and
So you
plugged
guys
it,
created quantum physics, basically.
not created, but certainly did
You
some.
were already delving in it.
No.
You people were in space, right?
I would not argue that we created quantum physics, but I will say we do have a calculation of the speed of light more accurate than Einstein's.
Really?
And
What
again,
is the speed
I'm
of
not the one saying this. This is me quoting the Smithsonian, to be clear.
Sure, yeah.
And
They
scientific.
wrote it as fast as the sun.
No. The point being, it's there, it's documented, it's written.
Do you feel good about that?
I don't feel any way about that, but I
All right,
find it
because you didn't
interesting.
invent it, you know that. Right?
No, but I find it interesting when the West paints us as ignorant savages.
First of all, that's a very
accurate depiction of my culture and pop culture. Yes, it is.
Well, yeah, through your experience.
Through many Indians' experiences. That's not just mine.
All right, through the Indian experience, but it isn't necessarily the experience of the world.
Okay.
It's the perceived cultural experience of Indians.
Sure.
That doesn't make it true, though. It's your reality. It is your true reality, but it is not reality.
I mean, we could just put on footage of Temple of Doom if you like.
Again, that doesn't necessarily mean the statement is true, though.
I mean, if we're going to get into what does is mean, sure. But I think that at a certain point, the subjective, when it has copious data, can be taken as objective. As in, these things happened, they had impact.
That's like saying all black people are slaves.
No, it is not. And it is that there is a difference between unqualified superlatives and qualified experience.
Whatever. All right. So we got to get off. It's 5:20. I got to get ready for a show.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to see a musical. All right.
Musical?
Jekyll and Hyde. Lost in the snow. All right. So listen. Savan and I agree on some things, but not on everything. I feel I am very alone in my worldviews to bring the world together as one people. Savan has solidified that, because of all the open-minded people I know in this world, I thought he'd at least be close to that, but he still believes in isolation theory.
We keep it spicy. Just
yeah. You gotta hate some people. You gotta hate some. You gotta be like, they're not us. They didn't invent
why
zero.
is it hate? Why is it just not just stay over there and come over on my patio instead of invading my house?
So I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and you're listening to From the Hat. We were talking by choice, arguing at random. Anyway, thank you, Savan. How do people find you?
Oh, I'm available on steam-funk.com, but more appropriately on unconventional.inc. That is basically my firm's magazine to bring some journalistic credibility to pop culture discourse.
And I like that it's easily spelled.
Unconventional.ink.
Psoriasis.com. Is there a P in there? I'm not sure. It's like, all right. Anyway, very good website too. I go there all the time, and I read his articles on, I don't know what's there.
Discourse on pop culture. We've
discourse. Yeah, I love his discourse and I love his pop culture. Everything is hateful and racist, and people are sheep, lambs, and what was the other thing you always say about them?
I don't often use sheep or lambs. So
well, I'm saying it to lamify it, so, a layman's term. But ultimately, we're all being programmed. All right, everyone. Thank you again. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Night.